Welcome back to Hardware Unbox. This live stream you're watching now is a little different to our usual content on Hardware Unbox. We don't usually do live streams on the main channel. We normally keep all that stuff for our Patreons. But today, we're doing something that will probably interest you guys for a few minutes and then become extremely boring. We certainly don't expect you to watch this entire live stream. So what's happening here? Well, the goal is basically to stress test our NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Ti Founders Edition graphics card. And that's for a number of reasons. We've all heard about the higher than normal failure rate for RTX 2080 Ti's, specifically those that use the Founders Edition design, either the FE cards themselves or board partner models that use the same PCB. So far, our card hasn't shown any issues, but we also haven't been using it for extended periods of time. What piqued our interest was an article from Kyle Bennett over at HardOCP a little over a week ago now. He purchased two FE 2080 Ti's from NVIDIA, and one died with the Space Invaders issue while gaming. When his replacement card arrived, he put it through a stress test running Unigen Heaven for about 8 hours, which the card passed, but then failed to boot after the system shut down, with the card basically being pronounced dead from there on. His first dead card used Micron GDDR6 memory, and the replacement used Samsung GDDR6 memory, and both died. So basically, we were curious whether our card would die under a similar lengthy stress test. We have used the card for some game testing for long-ish periods of time, but not 8 hours or more. We haven't seen any Space Invaders issues or really any other problems with our FE card, but there's a possibility that a long stress test will kill the card, similar to what happened with HardOCP's unit. And this is where this live stream comes in. Basically, we're going to be running the Heaven benchmark in a loop on the RTX 2080 Ti for the next 48 hours or more, while recording the whole thing. And rather than simply recording it to local storage, we figured it would be maybe somewhat interesting, or at least easier, to stream the whole thing so you guys can occasionally check back to see how it's progressing. And we'll also have a handy video ready to go in case there's any problems. It'll be right here in the video to replay. Neither Steve nor I believe the card will die. We'll be very surprised if the card dies. We certainly aren't expecting it to die, but we want to be absolutely 100% sure the card is a good one, and this is a perfect way to validate it. In fact, I'll be shocked if the card dies, considering it's been fine up to this point. We do know that the card we have uses Micron memory, and like all Founders Edition RTX cards, it runs pretty hot. The backplate in particular gets scorching hot under load. So hot that, to swap the card during GPU benchmarks, we've had to use oven mitts at times. If the card really is running, say, the memory at heat levels outside its specifications, then a 48-hour stress test could cause lasting damage that a couple of hours in a game would not. If the card is going to fail, it'd be something like this causing the problem. At least that's our best guess. Again, we really don't expect it to die. To be clear, we aren't running the RTX 2080 Ti overclocked. This is the card running at stock clocks in a stressful situation, but something the card definitely should be able to handle. After all, these cards are built and should be built to handle 100% utilization for long periods of time, and should have built-in failsafes to prevent the card from running at dangerous temperatures, voltages, or whatever. Because this is a test at stock clocks, we expect it to survive without any dramas. In fact, if it does die, I'll be pretty annoyed because I'll have to go and RMA the card, and we don't have a lot of 2080 Ti's around here for testing right now, so we really want it to survive. So the card is currently in my Core i7 8700K test rig. Normally we overclock the CPU, but I've taken it back to stock settings for this test. It's also got 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3000 memory inside and a Corsair RM750x power supply. The motherboard is a Gigabyte Z370 Aorus Gaming Ultra Wi-Fi, and we have it all inside the Be Quiet Dark Base 700. We're keeping everything under normal operating conditions, so the case is closed. We have a single 120mm exhaust fan, while the intakes are two 140mm fans on the Be Quiet Silent Loop 280. That's our CPU cooler installed in the front. You'll see all of this in a second when we switch to the view of our system running. We also have some thermocouples attached to the system. We have one directly on the GPU backplate, which is one of the hottest areas of the card. We also have a GPU exhaust reading, a case ambient reading, and a general room ambient reading. So as we go, we'll monitor these temperatures from time to time. So this has been a pre-recorded message simply to make starting this live stream a bit easier. In a moment, I'll be switching over to the live view of the system running the stress test. We'll start it up live on stream, and I'll stick around for a little bit to answer some questions if any of you guys have some before leaving it running for the next 48 hours. I might pop back in from time to time, but basically you'll be left with a view of the PC running for the rest of the stream. We don't expect anyone to actually watch the stream for its entirety. Please don't do that, but you might find it interesting to check back every once in a while to see how it's going. Anyway, I guess let's get to it. Hey guys, so thanks for sitting through the pre-recorded message that we had at the start of the video here. You can see that, yeah, we're actually live at the moment. This is the test running here. I started this sort of at the start of the stream, roughly-ish. So it's been running for maybe about 5 minutes, and the GPU, yeah, it's already about 85 degrees Celsius. And on the back of the card, the thermocouple that's attached directly to the back of the GPU itself, sitting at about 72 degrees. And it's quite warm today. It's been 30 degrees Celsius, so it's probably, I have to say, about 25 in this room at the moment. So yeah, we're just going to sit and watch this for the next 48 hours. I'm not going to stay here for the whole 48 hours. That'd be just crazy, but I'll stick around for a little bit. We'll answer some questions. And yeah, so if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll see how they are going at the moment. And yes, 86 degrees is quite warm at the moment. It's quite warm in this room though, and we're not running the fans at any sort of ridiculous speeds or anything. Just standard sort of quiet-ish setup here with the silent loop 280 in there and the rear fan on the back as well. So yeah, yeah, not super stressful on the GPU, but it is running warm, and yeah, fun times. So yeah, pretty much that's what's going on at the moment. So let's take a look at what you guys are saying in the chat here. Got my screen over on the side here for this thing. As we mentioned at the start, we don't expect the card to die at all. So if you were wondering, you know, why are we doing this? We just wanted to make sure that it's recorded on some sort of footage so that we can see it and all that sort of thing. So we don't expect it to die, but if it does die, we will get that footage on the screen, and then we'll probably follow this up soon enough. So, is this why you guys never sleep? Yeah, pretty much. We do crazy stuff like this, which is why we never sleep at the moment. Steve was out fishing today at the moment. He's in the chat as well. He might answer some questions for you if you have them there for him. What did your ISP uplink ever do to deserve a 48-hour stress test? Yeah, I think that's fair enough. We did sort of a test stream on our extras channel that we don't really have anything on, but we did that for about 15 hours yesterday and not a single drop frame. So if my ISP is working well, hopefully no drop frames for this 48-hour version today. Is value really the best stress test? Look, probably not. If we were doing it, we would probably use a more intensive stress test, but we wanted to do that specifically because that's what Hard OCP said that they used for their stress test. So if you go and check their article, I think we have a link in the description of this live stream to their thing where they say that they benchmarked or at least tested in heaven on a loop like we're doing here for 8 hours, and their card died, the one that uses Samsung memory. So we just wanted to make sure that we're using the exact same, roughly the same conditions as they were doing with their cards, and we think if our card passes, then it should be good for literally anything we can throw at it. So this is pretty much the most stressful sort of, yeah, stressful stock clock setting that you'll ever do, pretty much. Did Steve catch any fish? Well, according to him, he did catch a few fish, but he sent them all back. You'll have to pop in the chat, Steve, and tell everyone how you're doing for the for your fishing that was today. It was really good weather today here in Australia. 30 degrees, sunny. It was lovely. So perfect weather for fishing. Is 2080 Ti SLI good enough for 144 Hertz 4K ultra very high quality gaming? You probably don't need SLI for that setup. The 2080 Ti in a lot of games today can do 4K ultra 60 FPS. So yeah, I guess if you turn down the quality settings to very high, potentially you get a fair few more frames. Something like Battlefield 5, for example, you can run at say 80 FPS on ultra settings with the 2080 Ti. So SLI, yeah, I guess if you add it, you might be up to that 144 Hertz range, but again, there are a lot of issues still with SLI for a lot of games at the moment. Plan on cooking a soft-boiled egg on it at those temperatures. Yeah, we probably could. I reckon it might take a little longer than we'd normally be used to in the boiling water, but it's getting right up there. What do our thermocouples say at the moment, actually? So the The back's at 32 degrees, 73 degrees Celsius, sorry, at the moment, 73 on the back plate. So yeah, what would happen if it dies? Someone asked that in the chat as well. Well, we really hope it doesn't, because currently I think all up at Hardware Unboxed we have 3 2080 Ti's. We've got the Founders Edition card, we've got the GeForce WindForce one, and I believe Steve as well has got an Aorus one that you might have seen a review of on the channel a couple of days ago. So those are the only 2080 Ti's we have. Currently the Gigabyte one's in my test system, that one we use for testing. So if one dies, it's actually bad because we'll need to get it RMA'd, and then yeah, we'll be stuck with only 2 cards, which I guess isn't the end of the world, but certainly we don't want it to be dying on us. So is the live stream for 48 hours? Yes, the live stream, there'll be me in the live stream sort of chatting with you guys for, I don't know, until I get tired, I want to go to bed, because it's 10 PM here on a Saturday in Australia. But then we'll switch to just a view of the screen here running for the remaining however many hours up until 48 hours from when the stream starts. We might even leave it running for longer than that, we really don't know. And then yeah, we'll stop it, see if there's any issues. We'll do some restarting of the system, because Hard OCP's card seemed to be fine throughout, or at least he was saying it was fine throughout the whole test, then it didn't boot after that. So we're just wondering whether we see similar things or not. And yeah, so how much has this card been used before doing this test? So not a lot. We tend to use, you know, for benchmarking and things, you might use it for 2 hours at a time, 3 hours. Some of the stuff that I've done on the card was the quality comparisons you might have seen on the channel. That would have been going for maybe like 4 or 5 hours at most. So yeah, can we have a timer? I didn't really think of that, so probably hard to put in somewhere unless we can figure out that how to get that going. Could you use live streaming more? We'd love to live stream more. There's a few logistical issues. We'll have to do some live streams with both Steve and I on the channel. We live in separate locations though, and Steve's internet out at his place in the countryside isn't great. So yeah, there's a few issues there, but yeah, we'd love to do a few more live streams. We want to do sort of tests like this to see how you guys think of our live stream, so you can come and chat with us and see what's going on there. And yeah, so yeah, if you like our live streams, then yeah, we might consider doing more in the future. Can you bet on how long until it dies? Well, again, we don't expect it to die, but feel free to bet on it if you want. Are you monitoring power consumption? Not at the moment, unfortunately. What seems to be the main cause of the cards failing? Well, that is still up in the air. Well, a lot of people have been doing various different tests, whether that's, you know, not VRM tests, but testing the thermals of the memory. I've seen some, you know, thermal imagery of that. Gamers Nexus has done a lot of good investigations on the sort of issues with the RTX 2080 Ti dying. Didn't seem to find any specific issue that was causing it. Did a lot of things with like BIOS flashing, downclocking, trying to chill the cards, all that sort of thing. Didn't seem to find any issues with the cards that did have the Space Invaders issue. We think that if the card dies from this particular test, that it won't get the Space Invaders issue, because we haven't seen any inkling of the Space Invaders issue to this point. If it dies, we think it'll just stop working and then we won't be able to use it anymore, like in the Hard OCP article. But yeah, I guess we would sort of figure if that happens, it might be temperature related. But again, this isn't really to sort of figure out what's going on with the 2080 Ti's. We've only got one card that we're testing at the moment. It's just interesting to see how our sample is going at the moment. As Steve mentioned, a few of you guys have been mentioning the 200G overclocking. That is a very interesting thing. We're going to have our video tomorrow on that. So roughly 24 hours from now, Steve's done a full investigation of 200G overclocking with that particular budget CPU. It's very interesting to see how that goes with the boards that can do it. Do you think the cards dying might be a vocal minority, like the issue is blown up somewhat? Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, because we sort of have all these reports from people buying the cards, and I think you're more likely to report on places like Reddit or other places if you've bought a $1,200 GPU and then it's died. You're probably going to be an enthusiast, you're more likely to be in the enthusiast community. So again, it's hard to sort of say what exactly is going to be the cause with sort of the general population of 2080 Ti's out there. I think it's unusual that we're seeing this many reports of failing cards, because for something like the 1080 Ti, that's also an enthusiast audience. You'd also expect if there were a lot of issues with that card, people would be posting about it, and we didn't see as many issues with the 1080 Ti. So potentially there's some issues with the 2080 Ti. But again, I guess Nvidia's probably not going to tell us what's going on. I hope they resolve the issue. It sounds like they've been resolving the issue. So yeah, we're just fingers crossed that people buying 2080 Ti's at the moment aren't going to run into these issues in the future. 86 degrees, the card seems to be running hot. Are the fans maxed out on the card? Nope, everything is running stock. So the fans on this particular case are just on the basic sort of silent profile, and then the GPU is left to do whatever it wants to do on the fans. Haven't touched anything, it's all stock. Yeah, so out of you and Steve, who does the most GPU overclocking? Definitely Steve for his benchmark videos. I overclock the GPU in my main rig, but that's pretty much it. I did some overclock, testing videos earlier for the 2080 and 2080 Ti, but honestly, I'm not big into sort of that testing. That's more in Steve's domain, so he definitely does more than that. Did I make a mistake with buying a 1070 Ti for a good price on Black Friday? Absolutely not. The card is very good value at the moment. It's one of the cards we've been saying is probably the best value for 1440p gaming at the moment. That and sort of Vega 56 as well. So definitely not a big mistake buying the card on Black Friday. Don't know what price you got, but they have been available for very cheap. And yeah, certainly in our game averages where, we get 25 games, average them out, do the cost per frame, the 1070 Ti is right up there for 1440p. How is your experience with your new Threadripper rig? Good question. Love my Threadripper rig. It's really good. If you didn't see my video, I did upgraded from Ryzen 7 1700X to Threadripper 2950X for video editing. It's much faster. It renders at least twice as fast. Just some of the things with like live previews and that are very good. We have heard some reports and things like people saying Intel CPUs are much snappier for sort of editing. The editing process it is, not the rendering process, but editing in Premiere. But honestly, the 2950X is a lot snappier for sort of the scrubbing through the timeline, sort of jumping forward, sort of all that sort of stuff that we'd normally do in Premiere, adding effects. It is much faster. Playing the footage, you hit play, it plays instantly, whereas the 1700X might have had a small delay there. So certainly been very impressed with that. For gaming, it's faster as well. So love that about the 2950X. Probably will need to add in some more storage and more memory into my system just to handle a few of those things when I'm being memory limited at the moment in terms of memory capacity, because Premiere loves to guzzle the RAM. But yeah, look, loving it. It's great. What else have we got here? Why not overclock it and put it under more stress? It's not really the point of the video to overclock it. We know that if you overclock it crazily, that there's more of a chance that it'll die. We want to see whether the card will die under stock conditions, because that is what people have been reporting having issues with. Not overclocking their card, but just running the card stock and potentially having it die after either a long period of stressful usage or the Space Invaders issue straight out of the box or soon after using it for a little bit. So yeah, we want to test it specifically stock just to make sure that once we run a test like this for 48 hours and it passes and there's no issues, it still works after this, we know that we can throw anything at this card. We're not going to have any issues with it. We're probably not going to have to RMA it, all that sort of thing. So yeah. What frame rate are you guys getting? It's in the screen. It should be in the top corner there. It's probably pretty hard to see, but it was like hundreds of FPS. Look, Heaven runs really fast from the 2080 Ti at 1080p. It's crazy. It's a really fast card. What time is it there? It's currently 10:20 p.m. So 10:20 p.m. on a Saturday, and we're here making live stream videos for you guys. So yeah, fun stuff. When will you next face Megamix? Great question. I really hope I never have to face Megamix again. We've still got some of the remnants of Megamix. We've got the asparagus juice up there. I think that's all that we've got there from Taiwan, but we'll be back with Megamix 2, Taiwan, Computex 2019. That'll be in June of next year. So if you like that Megamix stream, which was terrible for me later in the day, I was really sick and we had to fly, the next day, but we'll do it again. Why not? We know about Megamix 2.0. We will be doing it. Okay, what do we got here? Why not Furmark? Furmark is just a power virus. Not really interested in running that. So, yeah. Are we guys in New South Wales? No, we're in Victoria. So we haven't been hit with the... There's been a lot of heavy rain and stuff in New South Wales at the moment. Big storms in Queensland. But it's just been lovely weather down here in Victoria. Love it. So will I be live for 48 hours straight? No, I'm going to go to bed at some point. Need my sleep. Got to get in there and... get some rest to do not much tomorrow, but we will leave the stream running with the main view of this monitor, the PC, that stuff. We'll be showing you that for 48 hours. So hopefully my internet doesn't cut out and we can run the whole 48 hours fully without any issues. Fingers crossed. We have done some testing to see what my internet is like and all this setup before, so we're pretty confident it'll work for 48 hours, but you never know. How long has it been on so far? Probably about 25 minutes, so not super long for a stress test. We would definitely, you know, if we were testing this GPU for an overclock, we would run it for certainly much longer than it's been running for yet. Yeah, so a few other people saying here, are you able to leave a stream running while still uploading new videos? Does YouTube allow for that? We actually don't know. That's a good question, Sarkagan, who's one of our wonderful Patreon members. Not sure. I think you can. We're planning to release a video tomorrow, so if we can't, we'll be pretty annoyed about that. But I'm pretty sure we can have a live stream and then release a video at the same time, hopefully. So yeah, fun stuff. What's this card have for the DRAM? Is it Micron or Samsung? It is Micron in our particular card. So yeah, yeah, pretty much it. That's it for that one. Why are you starting stream at 10 p.m? Because we always release our videos at 10 p.m, or at least 99% of our videos are released at 10 p.m. local time for us. So that's great because we can finish our videos during the day, upload them, they're all ready to go for the evening, which is sort of more, you know, during the day for Europe and the US, which is more our main audience for our channel. We love our Aussies as well, but they're only about 5% of our audience compared to 20% for the US, 20% for Europe. So yeah, we like to release at a better time for the guys that are sort of mostly watching our videos in that time slot. Monitor turns off after an hour. I hope not. We tested it for 15 hours, didn't turn off, so yeah, it should be fine. Viotech, good monitor. So this one is I've got the box over there, the NB24C. I recommend the GN24C. This is the 75 Hertz version, the 144 Hertz version of this particular one, which is a 24-inch 1080p VA. I recommend quite well. This one's not quite as good. It's cheaper, but I just generally think you should spend more money and get the 144 Hertz version because it's better. So that's pretty much it with that one. What if the card catches fire while you're asleep? I did actually think of that, because there was that report of that one card that caught fire. Probably pretty rare, probably something went drastically wrong there, but I don't think it'll be catching fire. So yeah, I don't think so. But if it does, we've got smoke alarms, so that should be fine. What are the other 50% of the audience from? 20% US, 20% EU, 5% AU, Asia. Yeah, we have quite a strong audience in India that makes up a significant portion. Canada as well makes up another significant portion of the audience. So you'll be looking at, with those two added in, and a few like New Zealand added in as well, and a few other of those sort of countries. And I'm not sure I calculated I think all of Europe's probably about 25% all up. So once you add those together, you get to like 70, 80%, and then you can throw in like the Asian and African areas. And there are a surprising number of people from those regions. You might think, you know, for whatever reason that they're not into English speaking channels, but yeah, we still get a significant portion. So it's a very worldwide channel that we've got here, people tuning in from pretty much everywhere. Are you sleeping in the office for the next 48 hours, or do you film from home? I film from home, so this is my studio in my garage here. So I can just go to bed. I've got my bedroom here, got my office, everything's at home. Steve's the same way. It's awesome. We love doing it like that. What else have we got here? AOC G2460PF. Yeah, that's another good monitor. If you pick that up on Black Friday or something like that, that's probably the monitor I'd recommend for the TN in that bracket, 1080p, 144Hz, 24-inch. So the VA panels like the Viotech are a little bit more expensive, so it could be worth paying that a little bit more to get the deeper blacks, the better colors. But certainly, if you're tighter on your budget, the AOC option, that monitor is really good. So I think you made a good choice if you bought that. You think if the Spyro Reignited trilogy will ever come to PC, it would put our rigs up to their limits if we use it to benchmark on the highest graphics settings? Interesting question, Spyro Reignited. I mean, from what I've seen of that video, of course, that game's using Unreal Engine 4. It looks like it's pretty much a remake, closer to a remake than a remaster. It seems like everything, you know, in the game is very similar to what it used to be back in the old days for the PS2 versions, I think. But obviously using a brand new engine, they've pretty much had to remake it. So I think in that particular game, it doesn't look like it would be super stressful on the GPU, just judging from sort of the assets, the lighting, that sort of thing. It's sort of that interesting animation style of game that isn't usually all that stressful on GPUs. I would have thought that a game like, you know, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, your sort of Battlefield 5s, those sort of games that tend to go for the more realistic end of the spectrum tend to have more GPU intensive effects using a lot of things like screen space reflections and, you know, more intense shadows, more intense, you know, shading, all that sort of thing. That isn't really the case in those more animated style games. It could be stressful. Will it come to PC? Probably not. I'd love it if it did, but probably not. Then again, wasn't it the Crash Bandicoot that did come to PC after a while? So who knows, maybe. What's my guess for Cyberpunk 2077 release date? Well, I don't know. I'm really interested in that game, but I don't know. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. What else have we got here? Lots of questions, guys. Geez, so many to get through. Any thoughts on color calibrations for the Dell S2716 DGR? You really need a tool to do color calibration properly. I mean, you can sort of, if you have like a monitor that's already calibrated, you can sort of put them side by side and fiddle with the on-screen controls to sort of get them looking the same. But really you need sort of a colorimeter, which aren't cheap, to sort of calibrate it properly. So sometimes monitor manufacturers have a driver that you can download and that installs a more accurate profile. Sometimes that's the case, so it's always worth looking into that. Some websites, if they've already reviewed that particular monitor, might have their profile available, so check that out as well. But there's variances from the factory as well, so it doesn't always make it, you know, sort of that perfect sort of, how do you put it, sort of, it doesn't perfectly match the panel that you've got if you use one of those profiles, so it's always best to do it yourself. What else have we got here? Which 2080 Ti am I running? It is the Founders Edition card, so just the stock, standard, boring, or Founders Edition card. Actually, I have all three of the Founders Edition cards here, the 2080 and the 2070. I don't think we've ever used the 2070 Founders Edition. I certainly haven't put it into my system yet to do anything. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that goes. Any bushfires going off near you? No, not at the moment. I don't think our weather has been hot enough for long enough to sort of dry out the trees and stuff to sort of get those bushfire conditions ready yet. It's been 30 today, but it hasn't been that hot for, you know, days in the past or sort of the last couple of weeks or anything. So certainly that fire season will be heating up, but yeah, not at the moment. What else we got here? How good do you expect the next Navi mainstream GPU will be? Pretty good. I mean, so it's interesting because we're going to obviously get the improvements to AMD's GPU architecture moving to 7 nanometers. That will provide a big performance uplift because hopefully they'll be able to clock it higher, they'll be able to make it smaller, they'll be able to sort of increase the amount of cores if they decide to go down that path on the same sort of die size or just shrink the die overall. So yeah, there's a lot of advantages that AMD will gain there moving to 7 nanometers, but the advantage is going to come from the architectural changes because at the moment, I guess on 7 nanometers, they're going to get a lot of improvements, but it's not really going to bring them up to the same point that NVIDIA's at with their 2080 Ti. Something like Vega 64 is still a fair bit slower than the 2080 Ti. And, you know, NVIDIA also hasn't moved to 7 nanometers yet. So you've got to sort of think, you know, AMD's moving to 7 nanometers, NVIDIA's going to move to 7 nanometers as well. So they've not only got to sort of make Navi a GPU that competes with the 2080 Ti now, but on 7 nanometers, it has to be faster for their flagship product so that when NVIDIA comes with their 7 nanometer product, they're not immediately superseded on the same process node again. So they're going to need to make a lot of improvements to their architecture, not just bank on using 7 nanometers to make Navi good. They're going to have to change a lot of things about that architecture because it is quite far behind. So yeah, there's some fairly obvious bottlenecks. Things like ROPS need to be increased on their GPU design. So yeah, hopefully there's a significant number of changes, and I would expect that considering, you know, that the node change usually brings about large architectural changes because they figure they can do a lot more on that node. So that's when they usually roll out those architecture changes compared to things like Polaris and Vega, which were similar nodes to the predecessors. So they didn't really feel the need to do as much there. How do you comment over weak optimization on Battlefield 5 for RTX technology? We have a full video on RTX technology in Battlefield 5. We're very disappointed with it. Yeah, not impressed with RTX at all. Very high performance hit. The visual, it does look nice. Like, Don't get me wrong, it looks good. It looks better than the standard effect in a lot of aspects. I think the noise issue in some areas, especially when you're moving, is quite ugly. But in some areas, screen space reflections have issues as well. So I think, the RTX or DXR effects do it pretty good. But at the same time, that performance hit is brutal. And I'm not really sure whether it's an optimization issue. I just think that that's the reality of trying to do real-time ray tracing, even on a high-end GPU like a 2080 Ti. So yeah, I'm not sure whether there's too much more they can do with that sort of thing. So yeah, it just kind of sucks at the moment. And yeah, I don't think Battlefield 5 was a great example of a game that is well suited to, DXR technology. It would have been better in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It's supposed to be coming to Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but yeah, don't know when that's coming, unfortunately. What else have we got here? So, what do we got here? Yeah, Steve's telling you guys about how he's fishing in the stream in the comments if you want to see that. Do you think NVIDIA will release an RTX 2060 or a GTX 2060? We talked a little bit about this in our Patreon live stream, the sort of GTX, RTX 2060 thing. So, for starters, I don't think they'll put RT cores in it. It wouldn't make a lot of sense, because what we've already seen with the RTX 2070 is that it's really not that capable for ray tracing. You're talking like, at least in Battlefield 5, like 1080p, 30 FPS is sort of where you're at with the low setting. Maybe a little bit better than that, but certainly the performance in that game isn't great, and we don't expect it to be good in sort of most other games that would use ray tracing. So you hit that issue with the 2070 already, that ray tracing on that GPU isn't great. So you think a 2060 would have less processing power on the CUDA cores. It's also probably going to have less RT cores if they go down that path. And then you're in a situation where you're not even getting 1080p 60 FPS on the lowest settings. So yeah, I just don't think that card will come with RT cores. They might call it the RTX 2060, but I don't think it'll be ray tracing compatible. In which case, then I guess for your question, it'll be more like a GTX version of the card. So yeah, personally, my guess, I don't have any inside information, my guess what they'll do with the 2060 is release it as their first 7nm GPU at some time next year. They should be about ready to get those 7nm GPUs out, and I think one of their previous generations, maybe it was Maxwell, they released the 750 Ti, I believe. Don't quote me exactly on that. Maybe the 750 Ti was the first on the newer process node, I think 14nm at the time. So they brought it down to that product first, the mid-tier product, and then their next generation high-end products also were on that newer process node. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did that with the 1060 era product or something around that. So yeah, that's sort of my guess for what they'll do, but I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen. Super chat question here from Luck AU. Are you guys coming down to IEM Sydney 2019? Pretty unlikely. We didn't go to IEM this year because it's more in that sort of esports space, which is really something we don't cover a lot of on Hardware Unbox. It's probably not super up our wheelhouse, so we're probably not going to attend that, unfortunately. It's nice that there is an event in Sydney, but yeah, we were at PAX Australia in Melbourne briefly, but IEM, yeah, probably not going to go to. And we'll go to Computex if you fly to Taiwan. So will we meet you guys at Taiwan? Probably not, but if you come and say hi to us, feel free. Will we see Pascal/Turing BIOS editor? No. Quite comfortably say NVIDIA's locked down their BIOS fully. Very unlikely we'll see them let people change the BIOS anytime soon. They don't want people messing around with it. You can already see with the voltage slider for overclocking that NVIDIA doesn't want people to mess with anything really with their cards. So I'd be very surprised if they have a BIOS editor for those products. So yep, just probably not going to happen, I would think. What other stuff? How is the battery life on the Dell XPS 15 with Kaby Lake G and Vega 20? It's been a while since I've tested that, but the battery life was fine. I wouldn't say it was amazing or anything. It certainly got the job done. But the main thing about that product was the faster than normal integrated graphics in that product. I still didn't think it was as good as sort of the i7 8750H laptops that had like a GTX 1060 in them or thereabouts. So it was an interesting product, but certainly not, certainly not the most interesting of all laptops, unfortunately. Is 85 degrees Celsius safe? Yeah, it should be. Shouldn't have any problems with that, I wouldn't have thought. So, yeah, fun stuff there. Is the MSI RTX 2070 Gaming Z good for 1440p high settings? Yes. RTX 2070 is sort of in that GTX 1080 bracket as well. If you sort of compare it to Pascal, and that's a very capable 1440p high settings card. So, yep, should have absolutely no problems with the RTX 2070 there. Maybe not high settings 1440p with ray tracing, but certainly with regular settings. Do you think there will be any affordable, good HDR monitors at CES? Maybe. We're sort of seeing the Acer has got some more, some of those 4K high refresh HDR monitors coming out this month. I think it's now December now, isn't it? Yeah, December 1st. So yeah, this month we might be seeing some more from Acer, and then potentially some from Samsung at CES. That's usually a big time that we see Samsung release new monitors. So hopefully we see some more affordable HDR stuff. It's hard to say because, you know, monitors tend to be released at any and all times of the year. There are so many models released throughout the year that you can sort of say, you know, CES is a time that they release that, but then, yeah, we might see more monitors all throughout the year. I'll be hoping for it though. The question about good HDR though, we really need those, you know, full array local dimming backlights. They still seem to be quite expensive. Hopefully we see more. Even good edge lit might cut the mustard, but yeah, that's just an issue with these sort of monitors at the moment, that we're not seeing those sort of maximum backlights at the moment. Geez, this chat is moving fast. Hard to keep up with all you guys. Thanks for all the questions, of course. And big thanks to all you guys who've supported Hardware Unboxed as well. We just passed 300,000 subscribers. So, yeah, a bit of a milestone for us here at Hardware Unboxed. Thank you all who watch our videos, watch this live stream, watch all the content on our channel. Mine and Steve. Steve as well is very, very chuffed to be at this sort of stage that we're at 300,000 subscribers. So, yeah, thanks to everyone who supported us throughout the journey. What else have we got here? Why is CPU clock speed more important than CPU cores? Well, it isn't really. I mean, it depends on the workload, of course. CPU cores can be more important for, you know, a thing like video encoding or a thing like rendering. That favors, you know, scalability across cores. So having more cores is more advantageous than a lower core count, higher clock CPU. Obviously, the goal is to get both high clocks and high core counts, then you get sort of the best of both worlds. But certainly for things like gaming, which don't necessarily scale their thread count to the levels that you see, you know, it doesn't utilize all the threads that it can utilize on modern CPUs, then you sort of see that they become thread limited, so then they become CPU clock speed limited, and that's when you see, you know, Intel CPUs pulling away from Ryzen in, you know, CPU limited situations, because you see that clock speed advantage really coming into play, because it simply can't, the game simply can't push out to more cores, which is why you see for that particular workload that clock speed is more advantageous. But again, as I said, for rendering, cores are probably the best thing to have at the moment. Is Steve coming to say hi anytime during this stream? He's answering questions in the chat. He's the Steve guy that you see in the chat from time to time, but he lives a 2-hour drive from me in a completely different part of the state, so probably not going to come over just to sit and watch a GPU run heaven for the next 48 hours. Probably not the most exciting thing to come over and say hi for, so yeah. What else is going on? Any plan to review the LG 32MU99-W? Now let me just Google this monitor, because there are so many monitors that I don't necessarily remember all of them. This one. Yes, very expensive monitor. The 4K IPS Ultra HD one. Again, probably not going to review it considering when it was released. But it looks like a pretty decent monitor. But again, $2,000, pretty expensive. So yeah, interesting one there. What are the people in our Discord chat saying at the moment? A few people going to bed because, yeah, we started this at 10 p.m. So yeah, fun stuff. What else have we got here? Yeah, maybe I will put a timer inside. I wonder if I can put a timer into the chat. Let me see if I can get something like that up, because that'd be good for you guys to be able to see what's going on here. So just bear with me guys while I just try and get a timer into the frame somewhere. Let me see whether we can actually do this. Should be possible. Surely they make this stuff easy. Okay, now I can get a capture going. One of these things should be able to do it. Not that, obviously, because that doesn't work. Okay. I'll get that working again. Let's go back to some questions. We'll get that working at some point. Okay, what other questions have we got? Oh, actually, let's check the thermals, because we've been running it now for about 45 minutes, and I've got the thermocouple over here. Let's have a look. What is it saying? Still sitting in about that 73 degrees on the back plate, so that's placed sort of right around that memory area. What else is it saying here? 53 degrees exhaust air temperature. We got 37 degrees case ambient and about 24 degrees ambient in the room at the moment. So that is what is happening at the moment. What else? Let me try and get this capture thing going again. Okay, just bear with me as I get up this little thing here. Here we go. Will this work? Wow, that's not good. All right. Congrats on the 300K. Thanks, V. P-O-J-E. Interesting name there. Not really sure how to pronounce that. Podge? Yeah. Tell us how you pronounce your name in the chat, because, yeah, thanks for the super chat, though. Yeah, we're very proud to be at 300K. Thanks as well to Gameboy3800, who also donated some super chat to us a little while back. Sorry that I missed that early in the chat. Yeah, again, very, very happy to be at 300K at the moment. It's been, yeah, sort of a milestone for us, and very happy to be there at the moment. Do you think chiplets is going to shift the paradigm for semiconductor design? Yes, it's going to be a big, big thing for the semiconductor industry to sort of get it. We're already seeing that with AMD's upcoming CPU design. And we'll certainly, I think the main thing they'll do is that as we get to those smaller and smaller nodes, we're going to run into more and more yield issues trying to get these chips, you know, running, I guess. And as you sort of try and make those chips larger and larger, you run into the issue of, yeah, we're at smaller nodes, so yields are going to be potentially worse. And then we're trying to make the chips bigger, so yields are going to be sort of doubly worse with both of those things. So I think you run into that sort of issue when you sort of thinking about designing new chips. So the way they're sort of tackling that is by making these multi-chip designs. So instead of making the chips really big, sort of split them up, connect them up using these interconnect technologies. I think that really will make a big change for not just CPUs, but GPUs as well, as they start to figure out ways to sort of split out some of the things. You know, potentially they could split out, you know, what do they call them? Compute units from the GPUs into its own maybe separate packages. And then they'll really allow them to scale big and still keep those yields up, which will keep costs down. So I think it really will be a big, big innovation for, yeah, for the market. Yeah, okay, still can't get this, okay, display capture. Let's see if this works. Grats at 300K, cutting edge retro. Thanks for the super chat there as well. I'm only 298,700 behind you guys. Well, it's always nice to start a YouTube channel. As long as you're doing it for fun, you can have a lot of fun doing YouTube. That's how Steve started, you know, the whole YouTube thing with Hardware Unboxed, just to do it for a little bit of fun, see where it went, and you never know where you can go after sort of building that up for a while. So is window capture 2 actually working? Because for me, it doesn't look like there's anything happening. So yeah, just don't know why that isn't working, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. Eric Chong, thanks for the $10 through Super Chat. As a realistic test, could you play Civ 6 and try for a culture victory? That would take you 48 hours probably. Yeah, my God, playing Civ 6 and trying to get any of the victories that aren't the space race I always find to be super challenging. Certainly the culture victory is, yeah. I find domination as well. If you're playing on the high difficulties and you disable all the ways of winning except for domination, then it becomes really, really difficult to sort of win that game without cheating. You certainly have to think about your strategy. So yeah, I love Civilization 6. I think it's really one of those my favorite strategy games. I think Civilization 4 was probably a slightly better game as far as the Civilization games go, but 6 was better than 5 by a long way in my opinion. So yeah, certainly one of my favorite games there. Okay, what else have we got here? Can you guys do a video on how to calibrate a monitor? Yes, I've got this big long list of videos to do. Obviously, there's lots of things we really want to do on the channel that we can't always do because of time reasons. I really want to get something out on how to calibrate a monitor, just as a sort of educational video. Might not be the biggest video ever view-wise, but certainly I think it's very confusing once you open up the utilities that show you how to do the calibration on sort of all the things to do with that, especially CalMan 5 that we use, which is CalMan 5 is sort of the industry standard professional tool that you would use for things like, you know, if you're in a Hollywood studio or something and you're trying to get all your monitors calibrated that you watch what you're filming on, that's certainly the sort of gold standard. There's also a utility called Display Cal that's open source. It doesn't have quite the feature set that CalMan 5 does, but it has a lot of, you know, sort of basic features as well. So that's certainly an option that we might consider doing that in a separate video. We would cover maybe both of those things. You can purchase CalMan 5 if you want. It's pretty expensive for the top models, but I think top version, sorry, it's not a piece of hardware, it's a piece of software. So yeah. Any suggestions for a color accurate 4K monitor, preferably 100% Adobe RGB? You should be looking at either NEC monitors, that's a good brand. Also Dell Ultrasharp from their Premier color line. They're not cheap. You'll be looking at for 4K with accuracy like Delta E under 2.0 and 100% RGB. You'll be looking at over $1,000 US, so not the cheapest, but certainly something to, yeah, keep in mind for that. What else have we got going at the moment? Oh, it's very warm in this room at the moment. Very warm. I think it's really, without any ventilation in here, it will cool down overnight, I think. But certainly because it's been 30 degrees, it's probably still about 26 degrees outside at the moment. Yeah, we'll certainly be sweating here. Gotta hydrate myself, guys. Okay, some super chats have come in. Thanks for the people that are supporting us through the super chat feature. Okay, first one here was from Novel Irfane. Sorry if I screwed up your name there. Novel Irfane? Yeah, something like that. Thanks for the $5. Would you wait for Zen 2/New Vega or build now? Already have decent 5-year-old system. 5-year-olds. Okay, interesting. Would you wait or build now? It depends what you're doing. So I think if you're aiming to have a high-end gaming PC, you should be looking at Intel. You know, while Ryzen is very well balanced, great value for money in a lot of product segments, I think that, you know, even something like an 8700K today still provides a lot of value for sort of 1080p high refresh gaming with a high performance GPU. You know, so if you're sort of going to be CPU bottleneck, you should be looking at sort of Intel processors. So I think, if you were going down that path and building that high-end gaming rig and you sort of weren't necessarily as interested in Ryzen then, and you wanted that performance right now, then something like that, you know, that's fine. You can build a system right now. You'd probably be very happy with it. Again, though, Zen 2 is probably only 4 or 5 months away. If we're sort of thinking, you know, they launched Ryzen 2nd gen in sort of April of this year. So if we think April next year, that's 4 or 5 months away. So if you can wait that long, which again is almost like half a generation in terms of product cycle, then sure, that's probably a good thing that you could be waiting for. And again, I think as well, if you're more into sort of your content creation, then we're sort of in that midpoint now between 2nd gen Ryzen, you can get like a 2700X. You'll probably be very happy with that. But again, sort of wait a little bit, see what's happening with Zen 2. And I certainly think as well, we'll be getting a better idea of what AMD's consumer products will be looking at CES. They're planning a big event at CES to talk about 7nm products, and hopefully we'll get a better idea of what we'll sort of be looking at for Zen 2 in the consumer front there. So yeah, I mean, I'd probably sort of consider waiting for that. As for New Vega, if you're thinking about Navi there, again, I think right now we're not really sure how long those GPUs will be. It could still be 6 months away, in which case, again, you're missing out. You might be missing out on that 6 months of extra performance you'll be getting, in which case, you know, there's some really good value GPUs on the market at the moment. Not necessarily something like a 2080 Ti, but certainly in that Vega 56, 1070 Ti, or even lower price tiers. There's good cards there. So yeah, there's certainly lots of options. Certainly interesting stuff there. Jesse also had a super chat here. Any idea when the refreshed Core X series CPUs will be available? The 9920X mainly. Should we expect refreshed Mobos releasing alongside them? So yeah, the refreshed Core X, which I'm assuming you're referring to the Intel Skylake X refresh, or whatever they called that thing, the 9920X. Yeah, I mean, we've seen reviews of them. They don't seem to be available still, so I would certainly expect them to be available before the end of the year, considering, you know, when these companies push out reviews of these products and push out samples, it certainly means that they're going to be available very shortly. It might depend on how their Xeons are going. Usually they would be using similar silicon for their Xeons, so that might depend, especially for some of the lower end products. They've already released the 9980 XE, for example, so the lower end ones might still be a little while away. But I would certainly be expecting those to be coming very shortly, and certainly this month, maybe, I'd be thinking, should be around the mark. Should we expect refreshed motherboards released alongside them? Yes, a few companies are planning on releasing refreshed X299 motherboards. They shouldn't be radically different from what we've seen already, simply because, you know, the CPUs themselves are very similar. There's no real, you know, major improvements there. You know, there's not really any new features that they could be adding in, but could be seeing things like beefy VRMs. We'll just have to wait and see what's going on with that sort of product in the future. So yeah, certainly I'd be expecting both of those things shortly. Samsonite Dove, or Dove, Samsonite Dove. Man, it's getting late. I'm getting tired. I'm mispronouncing things like Dove. What am I doing? All right, Ryzen launched April 18th this year. This is on Super Chat, by the way, so thanks for that. Ryzen launched April 18th this year. May 1st, 2019 is AMD's 50th anniversary, so it's a pretty good bet for Ryzen 3 release date. Yeah, that would make perfect sense if they've certainly got a big anniversary coming up to launch what will probably be their, I guess you'd have to say, sort of their most high. I mean, Ryzen was very highly anticipated as well, but this could really be that sort of big step up for AMD, not to just, you know, release a product that's way better than FX, but release a product that's highly competitive with Intel on every front, not just, you know, price to performance, but also having those high clock speeds, having that good AVX performance, having those instruction sets that match what Intel currently has in their architectures. There's still, you know, obviously a little bit behind Intel in those regards at the moment, but I think Zen 2, Ryzen 3 will really beef up a lot of that stuff. So to have that product launching on a 50th anniversary, which I wasn't aware about, so thanks for notifying me, that would be, yeah, a really good bet. So I think that's probably going to be around the money. Again, they could push it earlier simply because, you know, product release cycles, they might think earlier is better. They might release some sort of product. They might, for example, go with maybe Ryzen 5 or maybe a Ryzen 7 that doesn't necessarily have all the cores, release those first, then come out with on May 1st with that sort of flagship Ryzen 3 SKU. Who knows? That's all speculation at the moment. All right, back to the regular chat. Thanks for those super chats there. Tim, what microphone do you use? We use the Rode NT1-A. Both Steve and I use the Rode NT1-A. It's a great microphone. It's a cardioid microphone. I know a lot of people use shotgun mics, which you have to point directly into your face to sort of get those in. But with the cardioid mic, we can sort of sit it up here, and that sort of gets this whole area. So whether I'm sitting in the middle or whether Steve and I are both here for our Q&A videos, we can just use the one mic, and it's really crisp audio quality. And the benefit there as well, Rode is an Australian company, and they produce some really high quality microphones. Been using a lot of their products over the years, and yeah, we highly rate it. So it's a great microphone. Another super chat's come in from Les Peck. Are you guys going to check out the Gigabyte Waterforce 2080? I have one, but I'm still a month off finishing my build. Keen to see the temps. We're very keen to test any product that companies are willing to send us. Obviously, there's concerns about, I guess at the moment, the 2080 was already released a while back now, so any reviews that we do of specific cards might not have the interest that they would have had around that launch time frame. For Gigabyte, they've already provided us a lot of different cards. We've got at least two 2080 Ti's from them, the Aorus one, the non-Aorus one. I'm not quite sure what we have on the other ones. You'll have to ask Steve. But certainly, companies might not be willing to sort of provide all those products to us at once. So yeah, if Gigabyte, if you're watching this stream or you for some reason clicked on this stream, send Steve a Waterforce 2080. I'm sure he'd be interested in checking it out. But yeah, it just depends on what companies are sort of willing to offer us at the moment. We're not going to go out and sort of hunt new GPUs at the moment unless there's something massively unique about them. But yeah, we might get more of these cards in as they sort of come onto the market. Do you think AMD would make ray tracing as chiplets in the future? That's a really interesting question. I would imagine that their next GPU architecture will have some sort of accelerated ray tracing, whether they do that in RT cores, similar to NVIDIA, or whether they just have their own, maybe they just have one type of, accelerated core that they've got to do things like deep learning operations, that sort of thing. That might be something that they look at doing with Navi's, having that part of their GPU beefed up to do ray tracing on there as well. I'd be surprised if we saw chiplets with Navi. I would think that would be for a future generation. We don't know at this stage, but I would be surprised if they rolled out for their next generation. Who knows, of course. But I would think that, yeah, it could be a possibility that they would split out sort of the main shader processes and the deep learning processes into its own core. And that would also give benefits in sort of making those deep learning cards. They could have, one card that has all the shader cores on it, or just shader cores on it for gaming, or potentially for those data center applications that don't necessarily need the deep learning processing capabilities. And then you could have the second die that would have the RT cores, the accelerated, the integer processing, the sort of int4, int8 sort of stuff. That could have that on a separate die. You put the two dies together for a compute card. You put the two dies together for a high-end GPU that has that ray tracing capability. And yeah, so I think that's certainly something that would be happening at the moment. What else is happening? Still lots of questions here, guys. Thanks for sending them all in. Thanks for watching the stream. It's been certainly interesting so far. Nothing much has happened on the old card at the moment, so no problems. I wouldn't expect any problems at this point anyway. What else have we got? Should I buy a 2700X or wait for next Ryzen? Yeah, I just covered that in the previous question. I think you could potentially be looking at waiting for Ryzen, but again, you're probably waiting like 4 or 5 months now. So it's that trade-off between, do I buy now to get known performance now and have that extra 5 months with my new product, or do I wait to see how much better Zen 2 is going to be? And I certainly think at current prices, AMD's Ryzen processors are very attractive to buy right now. So yeah, certainly wouldn't be super certainly wouldn't be super devastated, I wouldn't have thought, if you bought that CPU at the moment. Have you thought of comparing the 2700X versus the 9900K in games? I think we already have a video up on the channel on that. Certainly we should have one. Steve will let you know if he's still in the chat. Not sure if he is, but yeah, we certainly have already done a lot of content on that sort of thing already. And as Sal says in the chat, I think people should wait for CES. I think that's probably a very good thing to sort of mention that. Again, AMD is sort of planning that big 7nm announcement for CES, which is right at the start of January. So if you were sort of tossing up, should I buy now, should I wait? You certainly get a good idea of what's to come in January. So yeah, it could be worth that 1 month wait, and then you sort of have a really good idea. But again, pricing for some of those CPUs at the moment is still quite good, so it is probably something to sort of keep an eye out on at the moment. What else is happening at the moment? What if the card dies? Yeah, good question. What if the card dies? Yeah, we'll have to RMA it. I mean, we're not overclocking it, so we're not running it out of the specifications. So the card should be fine. If you watch the intro to this video, you read the description, we firmly believe the card won't die. It's just a matter of, you know, if there's any issues, will they crop up after specifically running it for this long? Will there be degradation in the components? I think the main thing we're thinking with the card is, you know, is running the memory dies in particular at like, say, 80 degrees or 90 degrees on the actual die temperature, is that going to, that might not cause, say, problems right now. It might not cause problems if you are going to be playing a game for, say, 3 or 4 hours. But what if you're running at those super hot temperatures for 48 hours and that's caused enough degradation in the card that to the point where when you turn on the next time, the components aren't necessarily exactly the same. You know, they've cooled down, you warm them up again, then something's gone wrong with them. And that's sort of what I think might have happened with Hard OCP's card, which we're sort of basing this test on. And that's what, if it's going to fail, that's probably how it's going to fail. And because we're just running it stock, you know, NVIDIA's got no choice. They've got to accept our RMA. So yeah, that's pretty much why we're running stock. That's what we think would happen if it fails. Again, we don't expect it to fail. We're seeing no problems with the card up to this point, but we just think that, you know, if something is going to go wrong, that could be the reason why. Is simply running it for potentially slightly out of its specification for a long time might cause damage that you accelerate in a 48-hour period that you might not see from gaming in shorter periods. What else have we got here? Yes, it is 11 PM at the moment. 11 PM. So, yeah. Look, I probably wouldn't be doing anything else exciting at the moment. So, getting on a live stream with our Hardware Unbox audience to celebrate as well, passing 300k subscribers. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to chat with you guys. Gakchin64, I believe they are one of our Patreon members as well. So, thanks for the super chat. They say, would it be cheating if you open the window a little bit to cool the car? Yes, that would be cheating. I might consider turning the fan speed up on the Dark Base 700 we're using as a fan speed knob. I might consider turning it up a little bit. From some of our early testing, we saw turning it up doesn't make a significant difference to the temperatures. We're sort of looking at more like that, maybe, what would I say, maybe like a 3 to 4 degree difference. But yeah, we'd sort of figure the silent mode's probably a little bit better for this stream while the microphone's still on. So, yeah, late in Australia. Am I exhausted? Not really. Didn't have the greatest sleep, but, you know, it's been out and about. Today, took the dog to the dog beach in the nice weather. That was a lot of fun. It was packed there, lots of dogs, so my dog got super tired. Yeah, fun stuff. And all those guys saying I look tired. Would you have said that I look tired if I didn't tell you that it was 11 PM at this time? I think I look perpetually tired. That's what some people say. So, will the 2080 Ti go down in price soon? I wouldn't think so because it's their flagship card. Maybe with that RTX Titan that we've seen some sort of leaks and teaser sort of things about, maybe that will they'll push that up to sort of the $1,200 mark and then push the 2080 Ti down to $900 would be nice. But thinking of NVIDIA, they'll probably just release the RTX Titan at $1,500 and call it a day. So yeah, that's pretty much what's happening here. I think this experiment is okay, but I don't think any GPU can stay at 85 degrees Celsius for 8 hours or more. I think that's a common misconception with these products. They're built in a way that has these fail-safes built in. So the 85 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Celsius limit on the card is meant to keep it from burning itself out over time. The engineers designed that limit specifically so that if you run the card at full tilt for a long period of time, that you know, don't kill the card. Certainly if you remove the limit in some way and get it to run at, say, 100 degrees, then it might kill the card. But the limit is there for a reason, and it's for these situations where you run it for a long period of time. It has these fail-safes built in specifically for that. So, yeah, that's pretty much... Again, I don't think it'll die, but we'll see. We'll see. Best processor for streaming. If you're talking about game streaming, you're probably looking at... I mean, the 9900K is quite expensive, but certainly because it's both a good gaming CPU, it has, you know, the benefit of both high single thread performance and also many cores, the same amount of cores as the 2700X. You'll be looking at that sort of as probably the pinnacle for game streaming. We'll do some more testing on that on the channel. Oh, it might even be in 2019 at this point. Hopefully we can get something out on that in 2018, but we will be looking a bit more into that sort of game streaming stuff. The Threadripper 2950X is also quite a good option because that has similar performance in games to the 2700X, but you simply get those extra 16, you know, you get the extra 8 cores for 16 in total, and that makes it, again, a highly attractive option for gaming and streaming. So, yeah, again, it just does depend on sort of the things that you're doing at the moment. Yes, Linus exposed the Titan RTX box last night on LTT. Yeah, was that deliberate or was that an accident? Let us know in the comments what you think about that. I'm probably thinking that was deliberate, but certainly it's yeah, interesting to see. I mean, it was always going to be the case that there would be a Titan card. You would assume there'd be a Titan RTX card. The one thing that I would be really hoping that the Titan card brings specifically is that full the full amount of RT cores being unlocked, which would likely mean the whole GPU is unlocked, which the 2080 Ti is cut down slightly. But I think those extra RT cores could give you that little bit more performance for ray tracing if you are one of the people that was really interested in that. $30 super chat from Hammer Time Guns Ablaze. Thank you very much for the $30 there. Congrats, I've been following you guys for a while. I'm thankful to you and Steve for the amazing content, the huge amount of benchmarks, and for being honest reviewers. Thank you very much. We work long hours. Steve in particular works very hard on his content, his GPU benchmarks. That stuff, you know, doesn't take, you know, that it's not a short amount of time to get like a 50 GPU benchmark out. So we really appreciate that you guys appreciate the effort that we put in. You know, we wouldn't be doing this sort of stuff if you guys didn't think that what we're doing is good, and if you guys didn't watch it. So yeah, thanks for all the support throughout the years. Hey my dudes, I'm thinking of buying a 1440p monitor but run some games at 1080p. Does it look bad because it's not native? For reference, the monitor is the ASUS ROG Swift PG279Q. Will it look bad? Yes. Yes it will. When you sort of compare side by side a 1080p native display to a 1440p display running at 1440p, you certainly see that there's a big step up from 1080p to 1440p. But if you put that 1440p monitor on 1080p, it will look significantly worse than the 1080p monitor. And that's simply because of the non-native scaling. It has to approximate. It's not like 1 pixel going to 4 pixels like you would see running 1080p to 4K, which still doesn't look great in some situations. But in this situation, it's like 1 pixel going to, you know, 2 pixels. And because the pixels are in a grid alignment, you're not really getting that perfect sort of scaling. So yeah, it's certainly not recommended. I think if you are planning on running games at 1080p, I'm assuming you might have like a performance limitation there, then you should just stick with your 1080p monitor. Or if you do go and buy that monitor, then you should run it at as many times as you possibly can. You should be running it at 1440p, and you should be either like turning down the settings for some of the things. Another good trick potentially is to, in some games they have the render slider, like the resolution scale slider. What I'd be doing is, you know, still rendering the game at native resolution. So, you know, you get your UI at native res, you get Windows at native res at 1440p. But then if you turn down that resolution slider to something like 90%, which isn't going to be 1080p performance, it's going to be, you know, a bit worse than 1440p, you'll get that improvement in performance. The image will look a bit softer, but it certainly won't look as bad as 1080p on a 1440p display. And yeah, there's a few other people saying the same thing about that issue there. Tim, do you think NVIDIA are going to do a Titan Big T and a Titan Little T like last gen. Yeah, the Titan X, big P and X, little p. I don't think so. I think the reason for that is when NVIDIA released the Titan X Pascal, which was the Titan X Big P, that wasn't that GPU fully unlocked, the GPU that they were using for that. It was the same as the 1080 Ti, so it was cut down slightly. But it was still more powerful than the 1080. So I think if they were going to do this sort of big, little lettering again, there's not really a lot of room to grow. They could release a Titan X or Titan whatever, RTX Titan, for example, that has the same performance as the 2080 Ti, the same core configuration, but there wouldn't be a lot of reason to buy it because the 2080 Ti is already released. So I think what they really only have an option to do is sort of release that fully unlocked GPU with the couple of extra, compute units enabled, a couple of extra RT cores and all that stuff enabled, call that the RTX Titan. That's what I would imagine they would do. And then there's really no room to release that little p model in the future because they've already released the sort of maximum they can go on that die for Turing. So that's what I think would probably happen at the moment. I need some water at the moment. It's interesting speaking by yourself for 75 minutes. It's fun stuff. I recently bought a Vega 64 and I'm having weird issues in some games where the card sits at about 80% usage and is dropping frames. No CPU bottleneck and not too hot. Any ideas why? So the first thing that I'd be looking at, you might think there's no CPU bottleneck, but for example, are you running on like a Ryzen processor where 50-40% utilization is fairly common? Certainly the CPU doesn't need to be running at 100% to run into a CPU bottleneck. You can, you might not be using all the cores in your CPU. So that's the first thing I sort of be looking at there. The next thing could be things like sort of your memory speeds. Games can be memory bandwidth limited before they hit those issues with either CPU or GPU. Storage limitations as well. If you're getting into an area, for example, that is starting to stream in a lot of, say geometry, a lot of textures, say you're running fast through an area and it's trying to do a lot of stuff, then you might get those drops where your GPU's moves down to sort of that 80%. Your CPU's not bottlenecked, but your CPU being bottlenecked by other things in the system. So again, you could also, just check out those sort of things. That's probably why you'd be getting that. If you're getting 80% utilization and it's dropping frames all of the time, that could also be something like a software configuration issue. That's sort of all those sort of things I'd be thinking about for there. Why is no one talking about downsampling anymore? Please explain how this works and why, for example, GTA almost looks like native 4K when you use a 1080p monitor with 4 times downsampling. Or super sampling, I think. Super sampling is probably a better word to use there than downsampling. So first of all, it doesn't really look the same as a 4K monitor. I mean, native 4K, you get more data on the screen. It depends how far away you're viewing from the monitor as well. That makes a big difference. But yes, so super sampling, you're simply adding more pixel data and combining them into one pixel. So each pixel is essentially like a better pixel. It's kind of a bad way to sort of say it's a better pixel. It's not really telling you all that much, but because you're having it's actually doing more work and it's rendering it out of scene and then sort of compressing it down, you're getting things like sharper textures. If you render it native 1080p, it renders the textures just 1080p. It renders everything in the screen at 1080p, especially things like thin wires and stuff. You get a little bit of aliasing there, and when you sort of sample that, when you blow that up and then shrink it down, you get that advantage of the cleaner lines and everything because it has simply more data to work with. It can do some clever things in the downsampling to sort of smooth it out and make it look nice, just make it look sharper overall. You see the same thing happening when you take an image and you sort of, if it's nice and high resolution, you shrink it down, it looks really nice and sharp, everything's clean and clear. And that's simply because in a game when you're rendering at native resolution, not everything is like super crisp and clear just because of the way it has to render stuff. And just sort of the harsher things get smoothed out a little bit more when you do that sort of downsampling. What else have we got here? Any info on Corsair open loop cooling? Unfortunately not. It looks cool. I'm interested in checking it out, but at the moment, no real word on that at the moment. I had a 1066 gigabyte before, and the same PC otherwise had absolutely no problems in the same areas. That was the same person before with the Vega 64 bottleneck. Again, Vega 64 is a lot faster than a 1066 gigabyte, so the issues that you were seeing there, you might have just been fully GPU bound on your 1066 gigabyte. You upgrade to Vega 64 and suddenly those bottlenecks are more present than they were previously. So yeah, just check out some of those things. Yeah. What else have we got in the chat? Will you test a 9900K with the B360 motherboard? Probably not. I think if you're getting an... Yeah, it's one of those things where you probably shouldn't buy a 9900K if you've got a B360 motherboard because you can't overclock it. One of the key advantages of having that K means you can overclock it. And certainly I think a lot of B360 boards probably wouldn't be suitable for the 9900K in terms of the VRM, potentially running into issues at stock. So... yeah, it's one of those things where we sort of don't figure a lot of people would be pairing up their $500 plus CPU with like an entry-level B360 motherboard. We think, you know, if you're buying that high-end CPU, you're going to be buying a motherboard that is suitable for it as well. So I think that's kind of where we're sort of sitting there with that. Greetings, what is your experience with electrical buzzing noises on custom RTX 2080 Ti models you've tested so far? Yeah, you might be talking a little bit about core whine there or other issues relating to that. And yes, we have experienced that a little bit. Some of our Founders Edition models do it. The 2080 Ti, I don't think does it, but I think maybe it was the 2080 that does it a little bit in terms of its getting a little bit of that core whine. The Gigabyte model certainly has a little bit of the buzzing, but it does also depend on the utilization. Sometimes you'll pump it up to 100% utilization, get that coil whine initially, and then it's fine. Sometimes you get it for longer periods. So yeah, it's pretty annoying. It's not something that you normally see on cards. Certainly a lot of the Pascal cards that I have don't have that issue. So yeah, unfortunate thing, but that's just the way it is. Tim, will you ever cover VR performance for CPU and GPU? VR performance, there's a lot of interesting things about VR. You know, you can look at just the raw frame rate that you're getting out of the GPU, but that doesn't tell you a lot about things like you sort of the latency that's coming to the VR headset. That stuff's a little bit more difficult to tell, and that has a big influence on your VR experience. You know, you want to make sure that your inputs are coming straight through to the actual headset and the display in the headset as quickly as possible. And yeah, we're simply, I mean, I probably do have the tools to test it, but VR is still not a super wide audience thing. And a lot of things we still try and test on the channel, the things that appeal to sort of the wider PC enthusiast community. So hopefully we get to a point where there's a YouTube channel out there that covers VR stuff like that really well. There probably is. I'm not really super big into VR myself, so I haven't really looked into that all that much. But yeah, probably not something that we're looking too much into at the moment. Is this stream going to be for 48 hours? Yes, I'm not going to be speaking for 48 hours. I'll be speaking until I feel like going to bed. And then we'll just focus in on the screen, leave it running. I'll be super boring mode for the 48 hours. And yeah, we'll probably check on it from time to time. Sometimes you might check back into the stream. I'll be popping in to check on it to see what the temperatures are like that and all of that. And yeah. Just purchased myself an MSI 2080 Ti Trio X for £819. Had a 10% rebate. Do you think this is still a good deal over 1080 Ti? I'm not really familiar with the British pricing for GPUs. So normally it's roughly similar to the US in terms of like dollar to pound. So if you're looking at $800 for a 2080, that's not terrible. The issue now is that 1080 Ti's don't exist in the market. They're sort of, you know, they're fully gone pretty much. So I'd be thinking 819. Yeah, if that's, it's not bad. It's not bad. It would be nice if they get down to that $700 price point. That would be sort of the really good, good price for that at the moment. Oh, I'm going to check the... Sal says 1080 Ti's are typically £750 to £800 before they all vanish. So if they're around that $750 to $800 pound price and you're getting a 2080 for the same price, again, that's pretty good. I mean, 2080 is similar performance to 1080 Ti, so yeah, not bad. It's not a bad price. Let's check these temperatures. So we're still fairly similar on the temperatures as what we've been running for the past hour or so. So we're at about 73 degrees still on the back plates. That's directly on the back near the memory. We're also still getting, I think it was about 54 degrees from the exhaust out of the GPU and about 37 degrees case ambient at the moment. And it's still about 24 degrees in here. So yes, 86 degrees still on the GPU itself. But that back plate temperature is certainly pretty scorching at the moment. So if you think the back plate itself is 70 degrees or 72 or 3 or whatever I said just before, then internally on those FETs and stuff inside that, on that PCB, a lot of that stuff could be cooking quite hot. Yeah. All right, this guy's been asking about the LG 24 MP88HV. I will finally answer your question. Sorry I've been missing it. Let's have a look at the monitor and actually see what it is, because I haven't heard of it before. Looks fairly old, so it looks like it's been out on the market for a few years now, which means we're probably pretty unlikely to review it. We tend to stick to newer products simply because if you release a review of something that's older today, it doesn't necessarily get the traction it once was. It actually looks like a fairly good monitor. It looks like it's got slim bezels. It's IPS as well, 99% sRGB. So, I mean, it's hard to tell from the specs. We would ideally like to test this monitor, but yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, probably won't be testing that. We'll be sticking to newer monitors for the moment. What else have we got here? Tim, your skin is getting more pale with the minute. Get some sleep, mate. Really? I hope not. Maybe it's just the lighting in here. I think I'm still doing okay. Review the LG 32GK 950GF-B ultra wide. Yeah, would really like to review that monitor. Don't have super good contacts at LG in terms of getting LG monitors in at the moment, so we'd like to work a bit more closely with LG. That's one of the main monitor companies that we don't have super close ties with. We do work with most of them, but it's them and Samsung that we're sort of not quite as, work as tightly with them as we do with some most of the companies like, Viatech, Asus, ViewSonic, BenQ until they kicked us out, Philips, that sort of thing. I've missed out a bunch of companies there that we work with for monitors, but yeah, we work with most of them except LG and Samsung. So yeah. Yeah, the issue with the paleness as well is I'm sitting closer to one of my lights. I've got two lights there and there. When I sit in the middle, it's a bit more balanced with the lighting. When I sit on the edges, it's a bit brighter in my eyes. So yeah. Would you get an RTX Titan or wait until next gen cards? No, I wouldn't get a Titan. They're always too expensive. Yeah, it's always just worth it to get the TI models. Graham Wright asks, why did BenQ kick you out? So, well, they didn't really kick us out. They just basically stopped talking to us. So you would have seen, we might have seen I did a review of the BenQ something. It's over there, BenQ EL2870U. BenQ EL2870U. So this was a 4K monitor that claimed to have HDR. It was a TN panel. It was reasonably affordable, but basically I said the monitor wasn't very good. I gave it a negative review. Generally, I thought it was too expensive, and I think one of the reasons for that was that they were basically selling it as an HDR monitor and charging a premium for HDR, but really no aspect of its performance was HDR. It had, SDR contrast. Its colors didn't go above sRGB, and its brightness was like less than 400 nits. So you get that issue where I didn't recommend it because it was just too expensive. We're all about value products here, and it was, yeah, just not a good value product. So yeah, basically BenQ saw the review, they got back to us, they wanted to get in touch and ask us a few questions, which is fairly typical when you do a negative review of any product. The company will come back to you and be like, we just need to get some clarification on a few things you said. But basically BenQ did that. I responded, I gave my reasoning, I basically just said most of the stuff I talked about is in the review, so you can go and watch that. And then, yeah, I was supposed to receive another monitor from them, which was a 32-inch 144 Hertz variant. Didn't hear anything from them after that about getting that monitor in. It was pretty much supposed to be sent by the time, like weeks before that point. I sent some emails. I was like, hey, am I going to get this monitor? Am I going to review it? And they were basically never heard anything back from them. I didn't hear anything back from them after I sent in my list of reasons and explanations to them, some information on HDR stuff that they were keen on hearing. I thought, it's always positive when a company comes back to you and they say, we want to improve our products. We're keen on getting your feedback. Can you just clarify a few things about this? We want to make our next gen products better. That's always good. But then to not to hear from them after that point, and to sort of things to go dark on that side in terms of getting review samples is, not great. So I wouldn't expect too much more from BenQ soon. How fast is the fan right now? It's auto fan speed, so whatever it normally runs at. The case fans are reasonably slow, so that's pretty much it at the moment. Thanks BAAP for the 20. Oh, that's an interesting symbol there. Is that the rupee symbol? Let me just have a quick Google of this. Yes, rupee. Thank you very much for the rupees there. Nice to have our global audience tuning in to us on this live stream at the moment. Have you ever gamed on an OLED TV at 120 Hertz? I'm super impressed coming from an HP Omen 1440p 75Hz PC monitor. OLED is great. Like, don't get me wrong, it's great technology. And I haven't personally used a high refresh OLED, so I haven't used a 120 Hertz one. But certainly OLED has a lot of advantages in terms of its color reproduction, in terms of its contrast, HDR. It does basically per pixel local dimming, which is fantastic. But yeah, it'd be great if they brought it to monitors, but there's just issues with things like burn-in and image retention and power consumption that make them not as suitable as other technologies for monitors, which is simply why we haven't seen them used. And typically they're also quite expensive, and to get sort of like a monitor size in a density that's appropriate for a monitor is quite difficult, especially without reverting to like weird sub-pixel arrays. So things that you see on phones when they use OLED displays is they don't stick to a standard RGB sub-pixel matrix. So the sub-pixel matrix is for every pixel on the display, you have a red, a blue, and a green. On an LCD, you'd have red, blue, and a green crystals, and each of those change depending on the levels that you need for the color for that particular pixel. And on OLEDs that are big, like on a TV, even at 4K, you still get that RGB for each of the light emitting diodes that are in OLED. But once you start shrinking them down to the size of like a smartphone, you get into density issues where you can't fit the RG and B next to each other. So you get an issue where you need to switch to sub-pixel arrays that are things like you might have one green for 2 pixels. You'd still have your 2 reds and your 2 blues, but you'd have 1 green. And that means that your sub-pixel density is reduced compared to a native RGB sub-pixel array monitor. So that's kind of the reason why you might not see OLED monitors. There's a few reasons there. I'd love to see it come to monitors at some point with those problems solved, but I think we're sort of more moving towards micro LED and mini LEDs, the technologies that will take over there, which offer some of the advantages of OLED, like your sort of more the finer tuned ability, the ability to more finely tune things like the backlight for things like that, and stuff like that. Have I used the Thermaltake RL360 soft tube water cooling kit? I've not. I believe Steve has. But you have to ask him. And yes, Sarkagan, Pentile OLEDs are gross. Yeah, I think on Pentile OLEDs, I think Pentile is that one green. It's either green or blue. I think it's green. One green subpixel for 2 pixels. I think they have some noticeable artifacting issues where you can sort of see on the edges of like hard objects, say like text for example, you can sort of see some fringing of things like the red pixel sort of creeping into the next pixel, the blue pixel sort of creeping into the next one. So, yeah, I think it's hard to notice on some displays, but certainly it's not as crisp and clear as the true RGB subpixel arrays. Things like a 1440p 5-inch display. OLED response times, literally a joke. Yes, they're very fast, 0.1 milliseconds. They're crazy. So fun stuff there. Would you pay an extra $150 for G-Sync to your 144Hz 1440p monitor? Probably not. It's probably could be a controversial opinion, considering a lot of people like their G-Sync, and I use a G-Sync monitor personally. But the issue with 1440p 144Hz monitors is that they're available now, depending on the size, for in that $300 to $350 price bracket. So you're talking about a $350, say on the high end, $150 FreeSync monitor compared to a, $500 G-Sync monitor when you add that $150 on. And I sort of think if the panels are exactly the same otherwise, is it worth spending that significant amount more just to get adaptive sync? And I think in a lot of cases, the answer is probably no. If you're a gamer that plays in the 40 to 60 FPS bracket, and you consistently sitting there, you like playing in there for whatever reason, you're not into high refresh gaming, even though you've bought a 144Hz monitor, then yeah, G-Sync is going to improve your experience significantly compared to not having adaptive sync running. So in that sense, yeah, spending that extra $150 is worth it. But if you're up in the, say, 100 plus FPS range, so you're really utilizing your 144Hz 1440p monitor, then you're not going to notice as much the advantages of adaptive sync. Even if you're running with VSync on or VSync off, you might get a bit of tearing, but it tends to be harder to notice at higher frame rates. So certainly I would think that, yeah, it's probably not worth that $150 if you're planning on gaming in that sort of frame rate range. It really depends on your use case though, and sort of what your budget is. If you're just going out for the best monitor you can get, you have money to burn, sure, spend an extra $150 on G-Sync. But from doing a lot of testing on these monitors and using them side by side, I think it's quite hard to tell when adaptive sync is enabled or when it's disabled at above sort of that 100 FPS range. Did I see Linus's RTX Titan? Yes, I saw it. Interesting. I always thought there'd be a Titan coming out, but yeah, interesting that he leaked it. What is my favorite video game? So I just finished Red Dead Redemption 2. I played that for 70 hours on PS4. This will be, I like playing my console games as well as my PC games. So I played on PS4 Pro. I really like that game. It's probably one of my favorite games of all time. It's really, really good. If you have a console, play it. I really hope it comes to PC, so that, because I know a lot of you guys don't have consoles, don't do console gaming. I really hope it comes to PC because it is an amazing game. Witcher 3 as well is one of my favorite games of all time. Civilization 4 is probably up there as well. One of the GTAs, probably GTA San Andreas, would be up there. So certainly, yeah, those are some of the games I really like playing. And yes, worth buying an Xbox One X for? Yeah, sure. You can buy an Xbox One X for Red Dead Redemption if you want. PS4 Pro's cheaper though, so something to consider. What is your expectation for Navi? Do you feel like it will give us 1080-like performance for a reasonable price, or is it going to be another Vega situation? So Vega would be something like giving us 1080 Ti performance for a reasonable price. I guess Vega didn't really launch at a reasonable price, but today, Vega 56, for example, is quite reasonable. No, I expect Navi to be quite a big change. The move to 7 nanometers, I mentioned this earlier in the stream. The move to 7 nanometers will bring a lot of things, just from the technical standpoint, being able to clock higher, have more cores on the same size die. But I think as well, there'll be a big architecture change. Like I said, I think when you shrink nodes, you tend to get those big architecture improvements. So I think if you go with Navi moving to 7 nanometers, there'll be a lot of change there. And I would certainly be, I'd be shocked if they didn't have a highly competitive high-end GPU. Certainly that, maybe they only come out with a 2080 Ti on 7 nanometers. That's still a massive jump for AMD, and would certainly make them competitive, at least for the short run, depending on how expensive they can make that GPU as well. So, yeah, that's my expectations. I'd be very disappointed if they couldn't at least match the 2080 Ti or even exceed it for those sort of flagship tier prices. So, yeah, that's sort of what I'm hoping and expecting from AMD there with Navi. What else we got? Lots of questions. Let's scroll back a little bit here. Probably been missing out a fair few people. Navi will give us GTX 1080 performance for $200 to $300. I would hope so. I mean, the GTX 1080 itself is, you know, it's not quite at those price tiers, but certainly getting cheaper and cheaper. What's in my bottle? This is just water. This is boring Qualcomm branded water. Not a sponsor or anything. We don't really do anything with Qualcomm. It's got this water bottle from them one time. Yeah, just water. Nothing exciting. What else is happening here? Do I even game? Yes, do a lot of gaming. I've been playing, at the moment I've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'm about 30 hours in. Apart from the persistent stuttering issues and general crapness on PC, it's quite a fun game. Liking it apart from those technical problems. So yeah, it's been a bit of fun. What else have we got here? Certainly it's getting late, guys. 11:30 PM. Not sure how long I was thinking of doing it, but whatever. Let us know if you want us to do more live streams in the future. Don't know what we'd really be doing on live streams, but we're certainly interested in doing more live streams. I have quite good internet at my place, so I can do them a lot of times. Do you have an estimate of how many kilowatts the system will consume over the 48 hours? Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably be in that sort of 20 kilowatt range. Certainly to have the streaming PC and the PC going and the lighting and the display going all at the same time is probably, yeah, and that sort of, it won't be 1 kilowatt, I wouldn't have thought. It would be interesting to get the meter out. I wouldn't have thought it's 1 kilowatt, but certainly above 500 watts to run all of this stuff. I'd be thinking maybe 600 or 700 watts for everything all up. Certainly the GPU itself will be using, you know, sort of around that 250 watt mark. You add in the CPU, which is an 8700K. So yeah, you know, it's probably using a fair bit. So yeah, I'll be expecting it to use maybe 30 to 35 kilowatt hours of power. A lot of that will be offset by solar here. We have solar, so during the day, you know, I'll be running basically fully off solar, so it's not anything to worry about. But yeah, lots of power, lots of power. I'm more interested about the fact that this video will be uploading like 150 gig to YouTube over the next however much time. Are you and Steve trying to get into the Anthem closed beta for next weekend? It'd be interesting to get in, but what we currently have at the moment, probably not. Yeah. Tim, will you review PC cases in the future? No, probably not. We're not. Neither Steve nor I are super interested in PC cases. We just don't find them a particularly. It's like a lot of that stuff, you know, PC, you know, keyboards and mice we don't find particularly interesting. You know, things like fans, cooling, not particularly interesting. You know, it's nice to know which of those things is the best. We consider doing roundups for sure, but you know, we're more interested in your components like your CPUs, your motherboards, GPUs, even things like storage. Something that we're not super interested in covering a lot on the channel. Also, because it doesn't get the sort of interest that our other content does, so that's always a consideration for us. And again, Gamers Nexus does a really good job with their case content, so you know, we'd sort of have to, you know, we'd be competing with them a little bit in sort of doing that content. So yeah, it's probably not something that we're interested in. We're sort of more interested in sort of continuing to focus on our monitor content because there's not a lot of good information about monitors. We're hoping to test a lot more as we sort of build up our database of monitors. And yeah, so that's the sort of things we're just planning on specializing in. And across testing CPUs, motherboards, GPUs, games, and monitors, our schedule is pretty much full already. So if we tried to fit in like another component into that, you know, there's not a lot of time to do it. So even if we had more people on hand to test, you know, it's only Steve and I doing this stuff. We don't have any other people working on Hardware Unboxed in terms of like editing or anything. It's just us. We do everything, all the testing. It's all us. Even if we had more people to test stuff, we probably wouldn't be moving big into that other stuff. So yeah, we just try and do stuff that we find interesting on the channel. You know, we don't want to, you know, some of the views that we get on some of our videos are, you know, not as big as we would like or not as big as we get on some of our bigger videos. But we just do them because we like doing them. We like testing this stuff. We like making the content, so we just do it, and that's probably a good way to do it. What else have we got here? Why does PNY have so little market share compared to other companies? Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I sort of always group them in that same category as a lot of those smaller manufacturers. You know, you got your ASUS, MSI, Gigabyte, so the bigger tiers, bigger companies. Like EVGA would have to be in there for our US audience as well. They're not as big here, but they're big over there. And then you sort of put in like your PNY, which is sort of like your XFX and your Power Colors and those sort of companies. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just that's the way it is. You know, there's bigger companies, there's smaller companies with that thing. You're going to sit there for all 48 hours? No, I'm not. I'm going to go to bed probably in maybe like 20 minutes or so. So you probably got 20 minutes of me being on the stream, and then we're going to focus just on this for the rest of it. I was told that if you put an IPS panel next to a TN panel, you'll never want to go TN ever again. I wonder how much truth there really is to that. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. And that's mainly for the reason that with TN panels, the big disadvantage of them is their viewing angles. And it's to the point where if you're not viewing it like directly dead on, everything's perfectly aligned, your angles are good, then you get major amounts of color shift. So even if you're slightly off center, you can get big changes in how the brightness, how the colors are looking on that panel. You get good things like good response times, but also, you know, just you get issues with things with TNs like, you know, a lot of panels are 6-bit, not 8-bit natively. You get issues with, you know, a lot of panels not necessarily having good color quality in terms of maybe not reaching 100% sRGB, whereas IPS is more likely to do that. Contrast tends to be worse on TN than IPS. There's not a big difference between contrast for TN and IPS. But yeah, one of the sort of things you get from the IPS is that you can sort of view it from slightly different angles and you don't get that massive color shift. Good quality TNs are still good in terms of their color reproduction. They certainly are fast, they're cheap a lot of the time, but IPS is that step up in a lot of regards. I still think VA, this panel here is a VA panel that we're using for this stream. I think VA is probably the sort of best mix and combination of things, but every type of monitor has its problems. When you go to bed, is this just going to be a camera watching the screen until someone wakes up and talks? We probably won't come back and talk at all during the rest of the stream. We'll have to move on to doing other stuff. I mean, it's the weekend, so, you know, probably won't be doing too much stuff tomorrow. But yes, after I leave the stream, it'll just be focused on this for the next 46 hours. So I don't expect any of you guys to stick around. We're just going to keep it running. You can come back and check it from time to time, see how it's going, see whether it's died. Don't expect it to die. But yes, it will become very, very boring after I leave the stream. So yeah, that's pretty much where it's at. What else is going on? What RAM frequency will you suspect Zen 2 will achieve? Not sure. We'd hope it to be higher. Zen 2nd gen Ryzen's still fairly capable in terms of that, but yeah, you never know. Could you just move the monitor to the left and show us inside the case? Yeah, when I leave, I'll reposition the camera a bit so you can see the case, which is just off screen here, and the display a bit more, and then we will leave it at that pretty much. No, I'm not going to sleep in the chair. Come on, guys. I know that something, you know, it'll be this second time that I have to sleep during this live stream. That'll be when all the stuff goes down, probably. Who knows? What about a power outage? Have you hooked up to a UPS? No, I don't have a UPS, but in the entire time I've been living in the CBD of Melbourne, or in the general area of Melbourne, I've never had a power outage. The only time we've ever had a power outage was when it was scheduled to do work, but never have power interruptions here. The power delivery is really good. Even during the summer, just never have issues. I guess we might be lucky sometimes. And the internet has, we've chosen our ISP well, so we don't have any internet issues either. So we don't expect any of those things to go down during the stream. I'm not even sure if the internet works if the power goes down. I think the NBN box we've got here requires power. Not sure. We have to check that. Do you think the 3700X will beat the 9900K? Yeah, it depends. If they can get the clock speed similar to the 9900K, forgetting the core count, which I expect to be higher, if they can get the clock speeds right up there, they can improve the IPC, if they can get the latencies down, if they can get better memory support, and if they can introduce those things like, you know, proper AVX support, which seems like they're doing, then yeah, I would expect it to be, yeah, pretty powerful. When do you expect affordable 4K 75 Hertz panels to hit the market? I've been waiting for them for years. Not sure 75 Hertz is going to be the next step for 4K. I think they'll just go full up to 120 Hertz because it seems like that the panels that they're making at the moment, the ones that can do 4K 60 Hertz can only do 60 Hertz, and then the ones that can do high refresh can do high refresh. The thing that we're sort of seeing with the 75 Hertz monitors for 1080p and for 1440p is not as big, but definitely for 1080p, that was mostly them making 60 Hertz monitors that could by chance also go up to 75 Hertz. So they started to sort of bin the monitors or bin the panels a bit, I guess, so they could get them up to 75 Hertz. Because you know, a lot of people were finding that they could just get a 60 Hertz monitor and overclock it. So I think with 75 Hertz on 4K, probably not going to be as big. And I think if there were going to be high refresh panels, which they're starting to manufacture, that they'll just go to 120 Hertz full out. So like we see with some 120 Hertz 4K TVs. So, yeah, been waiting them for years. Yeah, don't expect them to be a big thing. Les Peck has donated $5. Thanks for the super chat there. Is there a certain amount of time before you should upgrade your modem/router, and do the more expensive ones make a difference? So we don't cover monitors all that much on hardware. I mean, sorry, not monitors, modems and routers on Hardware Unbox all that much. But so I guess the main question is, when should you upgrade? So the time you should be thinking of upgrading is if there's a router out there that has better capabilities than your existing router. There's no point really, you know, I mean, this makes sense, right? You wouldn't upgrade to a newer monitor or a newer router if it does pretty much exactly the same thing your old one does. But I think it comes down to sort of the devices you have in your house as well, because there's no point buying a router that has, you know, it has more antennas so it can do more MIMO streams, it has more bands. There's no point paying for that functionality if your Wi-Fi capable devices can't harness those capabilities. So for example, if you were, you know, back in the early days of 802.11ac and you had an 802.11n router, there wasn't a lot of point upgrading from N to AC if you didn't have any AC devices. You were just early adopting and you'd have to wait until you get those AC devices. And even now, even though AC has sort of been widespread in the market, there is still a wide difference between devices that, you know, can do multi-user MIMO, which is one of the big, you know, sort of modern features that you get with the mid-range to high-end routers, MU MIMO, and that sort of thing that I'd be looking at if I was buying I actually recently upgraded my router and I got a whole bunch of stuff like MU MIMO, massive, you know, bandwidth capabilities, and that just, you know, determines how many devices you can have connected at once. The more capabilities, the more bandwidth you have, you know, the more antennas you have, the MIMO capabilities all determines how many devices you can have. So I think if it's at the point where you have a lot of devices that can harness these new capabilities, if you've sort of moved to a bigger house, you need better range. You know, modern routers can do far better ranges than older routers. They certainly are improving that a lot. That's sort of where I'd be thinking about upgrading your router to. And certainly as you add more devices into your house, for example, you know, maybe 5 years ago you only had 2 or 3 devices. Now you might have 10 or 15 devices connected to Wi-Fi. There could be that advantage, especially if you're streaming a lot of like videos, streaming a lot of YouTube, or something like that. There could be that advantage to upgrading to get all those capabilities. But again, it depends on what sort of devices you have in your house. Another super chat here. as well. Thank you, Gakchian64. I hope I'm pronouncing that right again. You ever consider doing this test? 2080 Ti as main card with Vega 64 in BF5 with DX12 enabled. Yeah, not sure. Does DX12 support that level of multi-GPU in terms of cross-vendor multi-GPU? Because I know with DirectX 12 it's all up to the implementation of the developers as to whether they, how they sort of use their multi-GPU. So yeah, it's probably not something that we'd be looking into all that much. It would be more of a sort of, oh, that's nice if it works sort of thing. But I think it'd be interesting in the games that do have, that proper support for multi-vendor, multi-GPU, which I'm not sure if Battlefield 5 does. Again, I'd have to look into it. The interesting thing is putting your AMD cards into a system and then trying to get FreeSync running through them. That's one of the things we covered on the channel a while back. Haven't really looked back into that to see if that still works. Because again, for example, you wouldn't buy a Vega 64 to do it. You would buy like an entry-level AMD GPU that supports FreeSync. And it was possible back when I tested that video, in some situations, not all of them, to have that, you plug your monitor into the AMD GPU, and then basically you tell Windows to run your GPU intensive apps on your main NVIDIA GPU, and then you can basically get both the benefit of FreeSync through the AMD GPU and you're actually running on your faster NVIDIA GPU. It works sometimes. It wasn't 100% perfect, but it did work sometimes, which is pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Yeah, Steve says kind of pointless. Steve, are you still awake? I thought you would have gone to bed by now, you old man. Don't you always say that if you stay up too late that you wake up too early the next day or something, and you get all sorts of problems with your stuff by doing that sort of thing? Who knows? When will DLSS be available? Says Adam. Very good question. I don't know. We're constantly sort of checking with developers, checking with NVIDIA to see when these technologies are available, which is why we were sort of first on that with the DXR in Battlefield 5 sort of thing. DLSS is available right now in the Final Fantasy 15 benchmark publicly. So if you have an RTX card and you want to check out DLSS in that benchmark, it's only in the benchmark. I don't think it'll ever come to the game because they sort of finished development on it. But it is available in that game. So that's kind of it for now. I hope it comes to more things because we really want to. We already did test it in the benchmarks that were available and found it wasn't that impressive. But we really want to test it in real-world game implementations to sort of get to the bottom of that further, to sort of look into it further to see how it's going. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at for DLSS. Tim, have you ever experienced having to disable integrated graphics in Device Manager to not freeze the system? There's a nice plane going overhead at the moment. I have to go through 5 safe modes to update my Radeon drivers. Yes, sometimes it depends on the system, particularly with laptops. You can get a few issues with integrated graphics messing things up, in which case disabling the integrated graphics can make a difference. It's not an issue I run into all that much, but it can help sometimes. If you're asking Steve to do a fishing adventure video, you'll have to check out our Patreon exclusive behind the scenes videos. Steve's been doing a lot of videos exclusive for our Patreons. He's building a shed at the moment, so he's currently being sort of giving progress updates of him on this project. He's building the entire thing himself. He's bought a whole bunch of steel and all this sort of stuff to build it with. So yeah, if you're interested in sort of things that we do outside of the sort of benchmarking stuff, our Patreon behind the scenes videos have a bit of that stuff. And if Steve goes fishing, I'm sure that, because he bloody loves fishing, that he'll love to talk about that in a behind-the-scenes video. So we'll see what's happening there. But certainly, if we do that, that'll be in our Patreon behind-the-scenes stuff. Oh, yeah, it's getting late here. yes, as Sal says, who's one of our Patreon members in our Discord chat, Steve posted, yeah, about like 40 pictures of him fishing in the Discord, doing fun stuff there. So, yeah. And yeah, you do get access to our Discord chat if you're a Patreon member to hang out with us as well, but we talk about that in pretty much every video, so if you haven't heard us say that by now, then yeah. Gordon and Steve have both recently discussed their NAS drives failing. Have you had any experience with this? If so, where else do you back up to? Yeah, it was interesting. I watched Steve's video about the Synology NAS's failing. That's disappointing. I know our Steve, Hardware Unboxed Steve, has used Synology stuff a little bit. Personally, I just have all my drives in a few systems, so something like I've got like a storage server sort of that has a bunch of stuff on it that I have some files on it, but then my main system has 16 terabytes of drives in it itself. So I just basically just use that, and I haven't really reached the point where that 16 terabytes has been fully utilized. So I'd probably be looking at, personally, I wouldn't be looking at a NAS. I'd be more looking at building a full-on storage PC. Steve says he hasn't had any issues with Synology, so fingers crossed there. But yeah. Dunk V2 has sent over £2 through Super Chat. Can you show something from the shelf behind you? Yeah, sure. What do you want to see from the shelf behind? I'll happily get something off the shelf, but you'll have to tell me what you want to see. So have a look in our views. Got some Lego stuff. The boxes are very boring. They're just random boxes of stuff. But if you have something you want to see, Dunk V2, let me know in the chat. I'll get it off. We can have a look. The WD-40. Come on, guys. You don't want to see the WD-40. It is up there, though. It's up there. Over there somewhere. Pointing on this stuff's hard. Hopefully Dunk V8 gets back to us so we can show you whatever he wants to see in the shelf. He says BB-8. All right, let's get BB-8 down. Maybe I'll grab the TIE Fighter as well if we'll see that. Okay. So, here is the Lego BB-8. So it's got the sort of spring-loaded head on it. It doesn't really roll, obviously. Lego would roll quite poorly. But yeah, so its head moves. It's got various different things in it. Like it's got the little flame that comes out here. So it's got a wheel that you can sort of rotate that into. And you can rotate the head here using this other one on this side. And then on the back, there is nothing. So it's basically just got those few features there that you sort of build in. And yeah, so that's the Lego BB-8 there that you wanted to see. These aren't actually that, well, Lego's always expensive, but these aren't that expensive. So that is the BB-8 that Dunk V2 wanted to see there. So fun stuff there. I think if you guys want to see the TIE Fighter as well. Steve says, oh no, Tim's playing with his Legos. This stream's going to go late. Yeah, probably will go late now. So, the TIE Fighter. So the TIE Fighter is obviously a lot bigger. It's much heavier. So this one, I think you can open it up, and in the top there is a little seat in there. And I think that's pretty much all the features it has, that particular one. So nothing too exciting there. But that is the Ultimate Collector Series TIE Fighter. comes with a stand, which you can maybe see in the background. WD-40. It is actually real, legitimate WD-40. I'm not smashing anything, Steve. Come off it. So, this is your standard WD-40 can. It's got the nice little nozzle just in case you want to spray things closer. This is legit WD-40, none of that Fako stuff. Legit WD-40. Came from Bunnings Warehouse, would you believe it? Our local hardware store. 275 grand can, sort of your standard stuff. If I was going to review WD-40, I would certainly give it at least an 8 out of 10. I think it's quite a good lubricant product. The particular can with its adjustable nozzle, that's got to give it some points, so maybe 9 out of 10 with the nozzle. Versatile, does a lot of things. And yeah, penetrates, lubes things. Good stuff. What am I watching now? Okay, I've got another super chat. Show the big digger and make some noises over digging, please. The digger is probably the heaviest thing that's on the channel in the background. But you guys want it, so I'll bring it. Okay. This is the chat going out of hand, wanting to see the Lego stuff. Well, fair enough. You guys don't even see the background from time to time. So this is the bucket wheel excavator, one of the largest Lego Technic sets. It's battery powered, so there's some switches and stuff up here that we can turn on. So we can make this stuff go. And you can have some fun noises come through because this thing's not, it's pretty loud, but yes, that's the bucket wheel excavator. It's got other features as well. It can rotate, this can rotate and it can drive forwards as well using the various different toggles up here. But yeah, so thank you to Eric Chong who wanted to see the bucket wheel excavator and make some noises of it digging. So this is it. This took ages to build too, ages. Its scooping power is quite bad though, because you can just stop it with your finger pretty easily. And yeah, it probably does need some WD-40, but we'll stop that because it's very annoying noise. Let me just put it back. All right. Style asks, what's the backplate temp at? Okay, let's give that a look. I silly didn't put my thermocouple around this side. So, the backplate temp is currently at 72.5 degrees Celsius. We also have 54 degrees exhaust and 36 degrees case ambient and 24 degrees in the room at the moment. I am just going to do a quick break and come back because why not? I'm having fun. I don't need to go to bed anytime soon. So I'll be back in a couple of minutes. All right, no need to worry, guys. I didn't go to bed. All right, what's been happening? Fish and Bikes. I guess maybe I was away, maybe I didn't see it, has given us a super chat here. My RTX 2080 blue screens in ARC when I fly in online servers, but is fine on single player. This seems to be a very common problem for RTX. Is there any comment? Yeah, honestly, I haven't heard about this problem before, but that certainly is pretty unusual to have a blue screen in particular with that particular card in that specific setting. Very unusual. I would imagine that that's just a driver problem. So you'd hopefully get enough, support from NVIDIA, make a bit of noise, and NVIDIA might fix that one. But yeah, I'd imagine that's a driver issue. Something that it does in the online segment is different from the single player, and it's just screwing it up somehow. That's a very unusual problem, yeah. Certainly haven't heard about that one. Darude Sandstorm, come on, we don't drink VB. I know we're from Victoria, but we don't drink VB, seriously. What internet service provider are you with? Aussie Broadband, in case you're wondering. They have very good reliability and speeds, no problems, had no problems with them this entire time. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Wouldn't it be funny if I was still mic'd up during my break? Yeah, that would have been funny, but I'm not wearing a lapel mic, so no chances of that happening. Greetings from Malaysia. What are the best places to visit in Australia? Yeah, visiting in Australia, I mean, down here in Melbourne, unless you're really like, so your food and restaurants, cafes, that sort of thing, probably not a whole lot to see down here. I'd be definitely going to either, the desert in the centre, so going to see like Uluru and that sort of area in the Northern Territory. Also, the Great Barrier Reef is spectacular. I'd go up to somewhere like Port Douglas, head there, go out and see the reef. And yeah, Sydney as well. If you like seeing things like the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge, they've got a really good zoo there as well. So if you want to see like the Australian animals and you don't want to actually see them out in the outback, go there. That's probably my recommendations there. And I just know I'm going to knock that down. Maybe I'll leave this here just in case. Krabby Gamer has sent us some rupees. Thank you for that. Scar 2 or Zephyrus M 1070. So that's a laptop question, talking about the Asus ROG versions of those laptops. The Scar's good, like it's good, but it's more of a mid-range laptop, the Zephyrus being a higher-end laptop. I think, personally, if I'm buying a gaming laptop, I really want it to be portable. So I would go the Zephyrus M from that perspective, simply because it actually is a very portable system. And the good thing about both those systems, either the Scar 2 or the Zephyrus M, is both of them come with the fully fledged GTX 1070, not the Max-Q variant. The old Zephyrus had up to a 1080 Max-Q, but I believe the new Zephyrus M version has that actual full 1070 in it, rather than going for the 1080 Max-Q. So yes, that would be my choice. Obviously, it's much more expensive to get the Zephyrus. That's something you have to keep in mind, but I love the portability. Has any of Hardware Unboxed life habits changed or adapted to your life since joining? It's an interesting question. How's my life changed? I mean, I was never really a super talkative person and not super comfortable getting in front of the camera, so I think I've gotten a lot better at that since joining. Certainly been hopefully working on that a little bit. Yeah, I mean, my schedule, I guess, is just sort of similar to how it always has been. I think because I was doing this for TechSpot before now, there wasn't a lot of change in sort of, there's always been times where we really need to get things out on time, so there'd be a lot of crunching and working, late hours into the night and getting up early to finish it off the next day. We did that with our RTX video in Battlefield 5. We did a lot of work on that. Didn't get much sleep to get that one out. So, I mean, that sort of stuff was sort of happening before Hardware Unboxed. I just think the main one is like, just we were getting a lot more stuff now that we were doing Hardware Unboxed. Like a lot more hardware's been coming in, so a lot more times needed to be focused on sort of organizing all the stuff we have and that sort of thing. So that's probably where that comes from. What do you think is the best GPU to get for 1440p 144 Hertz now that the 1080 Ti is out of stock? Is the 2080 a good middle ground, or just go for the 2080 Ti? The 2080 Ti is probably overkill for 1440p 144 Hertz. That's really for your 4K gaming. 2080 will be very good for 1440p 144 Hertz. So yeah, I'd go 2080 for that one, I reckon. The asparagus juice. The asparagus juice. So that is... So for those of you who weren't around for Megamix, which happened in Computex 2018, we did a stream, we got some Asian drinks, we mixed them all together at the end, which was a bad idea. But we had this thing here, asparagus juice, green asparagus juice. This is the most disgusting drink I've ever tasted. In fact, just the worst tasting thing ever. It's awful. It tastes like asparagus, but in a bad way. Like, you eat asparagus is fine, but this is like asparagus sitting in water and just sort of stewing. And it's got like a very, like, it's hard to describe, like a sort of weak vegetable water, like almost as if you'd boiled vegetables and then drank the water. That's what this tastes like in a really bad way. So I don't know why you would drink this. It's just, it's beyond me, but it's awful. It truly is terrible. And now it forever lives on the shelf. Have I tried a durian? Yes, I've tried a durian. I thought it was pretty bad. I think not. It wasn't as, some people say that durians smell really bad and taste good. I just thought it tasted like a weird sort of onion. Just, yeah, it wasn't, really worse. It wasn't really that bad, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't good either. So, yeah, not good. Funnily enough, there's a guy that lives around here that drives a durian truck. So, delivers durians or something. He's in the durian business. I don't know. Is this still live? Yeah, it's live. For that person asked, is it live? Yep, it's still live. Probably gone for a bit longer than I thought I would go to. And yeah, it is. It's the 2nd of December now. It's just past midnight. And nothing interesting has happened on the stream. Not that I was expecting anything interesting to happen at this point. So will you let this stream go for 48 hours? Yes. I'm going to get off the stream, go to bed, and just leave it running for the next 2 days. Yep. Certainly interesting stuff. So I'm guessing that the card with the clock speeds, which I believe, let me have a look, 1635 megahertz. Yeah, it's probably just hitting that sort of thermal limit because it is running at 86 degrees on the core. 74 degrees on the back plate as well last time I checked. So yeah. So yeah, stock clocks. That's how it runs. It's stocked. You can certainly get that much higher with overclocking. And working a bit more on the thermals. Can I tell you guys more about my personal main gaming system? So it's basically the system you would have seen in the Threadripper 2950X build. So it's got a Threadripper 2950X. I haven't overclocked or anything, it's just running stock at the moment, but it hits about the sort of 4 gigahertz mark quite reasonably. It depends on the workload, but that's a good sort of amount that it gets to. It's on the MSI Meg X399 Creation motherboard. So one of those really top-end X399 boards. It's been great. I love that board. I'm running a Gigabyte RTX 2080 Ti in my main system. So that's been good for gaming. I use an ultra-wide monitor, so 3440 by 1440, 100 Hertz, and the RTX 2080 Ti and ultra settings does get you up around that 100 FPS mark in a lot of games, so it's good for that. It's got 32 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance LED memory, DDR4 3000. I'll be upgrading that to 64 gig at some point. There's just a few SSDs, few hard drives in there. It's in the Corsair Obsidian 500D. I've got a Corsair, have I got the box out here? Yeah, I've got the 150i Pro in there. I've got an RM750x in there as well. So that's my main system. Use it for video editing, use it for gaming, use it for everything. If it did die, how would you know it was the card and not a power supply issue? Well, if it was a power supply, we could just swap out the power supply. And if it's the card, we could swap into another system. And if it still doesn't work, then it's dead, pretty much. What else is happening? How badly do you really need heatsinks on DDR4? Probably not that required, but yeah, probably improves things a little bit. But RAM temperature is never really a big issue, especially if you have, you know, even some form of airflow in the system. Unless you're sort of massively overclocking them, running at those really high speeds, then you might need to think about it. But really, it's not really a huge point of it. Any idea what's delaying the Asus CG32 shown at Computex? Ah, Nick, you ask us a lot about the CG32 because I know you're very interested in it. Still no word, and the main thing about that is that Asus is well known to release monitors, to announce monitors so far ahead of when they actually release them. Some monitors like a year later, you might be lucky to get them released, like 18 months. So yeah, if there's no word, there's no word, unfortunately. Have I just been answering questions for the last 2 hours? Yeah, pretty much. It's been fun though. We've shown off some stuff from the set that you guys wanted to see. Showed off like the BB-8, showed off the TIE Fighter, the Bucket Wheel Excavator, all that sort of thing. So yeah. Your thoughts on falling SSD prices and guesstimate on when spinning Rust will be replaced for home media storage? Yeah, it's nice to have SSD prices come down, but hard drive prices also come down. So a drive like an 8 terabyte drive is really affordable now. You know, you get your 10, 12 terabytes on the market as well. So I don't think they will ever really replace that sort of, you know, tier. There could be a point where you simply can't get enough storage inside an actual hard drive, which would then make them less attractive than a solid state drive, which could potentially have higher density. But I don't think that we'll ever get to a point where SSDs are that sort of current, like prices that are currently you'd see for a hard drive. They'll certainly get a lot cheaper, but not that level. So yeah, it's certainly at a point where SSDs are very affordable. But yeah, I wouldn't see that happening. And certainly I think, you know, there's always going to be that trade-off of hard drives are slow, but are going to be big. SSDs are going to be fast, but smaller, or they might just be fast, the same capacity, but a lot more expensive. So that's just that sort of thing. Are we likely to see a large-scale shift to DDR5 during 2019? Very unlikely. It still seems a while away. If a Star Wars item was being bought for you this Christmas, what would you like it to be? I don't know. I already own most of the Star Wars Lego I want to own, so maybe not that. Are you ex-RMIT? No, I went to the University of Melbourne. So maybe there's a rivalry there. I don't know. I never really did much of that stuff when I was at uni. Crucial MX500 or Samsung 860 EVO. The 860 EVO is faster than the MX500, so that could be a reason to get it. But I think if you're getting in that, if you're in that sort of SATA tier of SSDs, you should just get like a really dirt cheap drive. So like the 860 QVO, the new Samsung drive, is very, very affordable. The MX500, very affordable. So that's sort of what I think. If you want that sort of, if you look after an SSD for performance, you should be going like M2, M.2, NVMe drives, PCIe, that sort of thing. Please say something about Intel GPUs before I hit the hay. Yeah, it's hard to know what Intel is going to do with their GPUs. I'd be surprised if they were at the performance level that Nvidia or AMD were at the time that they come out. So if they come out 2020, I'd be surprised if they were as powerful as AMD or Nvidia GPUs at that time. Whether they'd be affordable, obviously they have to have some advantage. So whether that's price to performance or something, that'll be interesting. I certainly think they will be designed primarily for compute, so they'll be heavily focused on, you know, your double precision compute, your things like int 8, int 4, deep learning, that sort of thing. So I would imagine that the GPU will be very heavily designed towards that. So it'll be interesting to see what the balance will be between sort of traditional shader cores and the cores that are designed for those, you know, other types of processing. Yeah, interesting stuff. Why don't ARM processors enter the desktop space? ARM processors are slow. They're coming into the laptops at the moment, but they don't scale particularly well up to the sort of high wattage that you see with Intel CPUs. And Intel CPUs and AMD as well on x86 have a lot of instructions that ARM processors can't execute. So, because they're just not built to handle those sort of pipelines. So that's kind of the reason why you don't see ARM fully in the desktop space. There'll be a lot of compatibility issues as well with a lot of, you know, applications built for x86 not working on ARM. Good for specialized tasks like data centers that can specialize and use ARM instructions. Things like your tablets and phones that are built on ARM. So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense there. There's a lot of acceleration with ARM processors as well. What's the time there? It's currently nearly 12:30 a.m. here in Australia. So yeah, fun stuff. How long until Intel release 10nm desktop CPUs? Hopefully next year, but we'll sort of wait and see what level of 10nm we get, whether it's sort of like a cut down crappy 10nm or whatever. So yeah, interesting. And hey Brian, I see that Tech Yes City has joined us for a bit of fun times here. So yeah, it's probably getting towards the end of the bit where I'll be on the stream. The stream will continue to run for a long time after this. Can we cook an egg on the back plate in the morning? Probably. Let's take a look at the temperature. So we're currently 73 degrees on the back plate. So it probably could be used for eggs. If you got some sort of device that you could cook the egg on there, yeah, possibly. It's a big metal slab in there too. Yeah, you might want to towel it up or at least put something on there to sort of prevent the egg from slipping out everywhere. So yeah, that's kind of what would be happening there. What else have we got here? Best GPU for 1440p ultra gaming, probably like a 1070 Ti or a Vega 56 at the moment going on pricing. Very good value for money there. What else have we got here? Yeah. What's your preference of drink? Wine, spirits, beer, or a cheeky premix? I prefer beer out of that selection. Not a huge fan of wine or premixed drinks. I think they're mostly terrible. Spirits, yeah, I can go a good spirit, like a good whiskey, that sort of thing. like a good whiskey. But yeah, generally it's like beer or cider is what I would normally drink on sort of like a hot night like to that. And yes, Sal, I do reckon that the 2080 Ti issue is some sort of manufacturing issue. I think it's probably some batch of components that they used. Maybe it's the memory, maybe it's some other component that was there, used on the boards, used on the Founders Edition PCB design is faulty in some way, and they just shipped out cards. It was missed in the QA testing somehow. Yeah, I just think that is the situation there. Single malt or blended, of course single malt blended stuff is pretty rubbish. Good if you're mixing it with like Coke or something, but if you're going to drink it straight, you definitely need to get a single malt. What did I study at university? So I have a master's degree in electrical engineering. So that's what I studied. It was fun. It was interesting stuff. Good to get some info on sort of how stuff's designed. Did some PCB stuff, all that sort of thing. So yeah, I've done stuff like PCB design, done designs of filters, that sort of thing. There's a lot of what electrical engineering was sort of focused on, a lot of maths, sort of figuring out those sort of things. And yeah, built a few things. It was fun, it was interesting, and now I'm doing this. So fun stuff. And yes, yeah, a lot of good an electrical engineering degree does when you're just making YouTube videos. Yeah, I know. I could have got a job doing engineering, I guess, but I think this is a much better life to have. Much more fun. I get to work from home, which is great. Someone asked Scotch or Japanese. I like both. I tend to find a lot of the Japanese stuff to be better from the stuff I've tested in sort of similar price categories. I just prefer some of the taste of the Japanese stuff, but Scotch is good too. Depends what it is though. And don't ask me to remember any names of any whiskey because I have no idea. Don't remember anything. What was my final year project? So we did a really interesting final year project. We built a communication system that communicated over alcohol molecules. So we built this system that basically would physically spray alcohol across a room. We developed a coding system, fairly unique and interesting coding system that was different to how modern like internet coding actually works. So we did a lot of stuff on that. So our project was a big focus on that sort of side of the communication side of electrical engineering. So yeah, it was really slow, but we did some interesting things there with how we could get the sensor response to work well, how we could sort of deal with errors and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's what we did. And we could send hello world in like maybe like a minute. It's pretty slow. Am I going to see yes, Brian? Probably not. Probably not. Not super interesting going to see yes. I think we'll probably just keep it at Computex. Certainly we don't have plans to go to CES. So if there's anything happening, we'll be covering it from here. I would build the similar system that we were using with a WD-40, but it'd be difficult to find a sensor that would detect WD-40. I mean, there's probably an oil sensor actually, but it would just depend what sort of response is like. The alcohol sensors were quite fast and didn't require a lot of alcohol to detect, so that made them really good for sort of the application we were using it for. But yeah. Ever written a book, would I? No, I'd never considered writing a book. That would be a lot of work, so yeah, that wouldn't happen. All right. A very Australian final project, anything to work with booze. Yeah. It did work with booze. We did most of the testing with methylated spirits, but yeah, work with booze for sure. Fun stuff. Have I been here for 2 hours? Yes, I've been sitting here for 2.5 hours now, pretty much, except for that one time I took a break for like a minute. But yeah, it's like 12:30 a.m, so I should probably get off the stream soon and go to bed. I'm not going to spray the WD-40 in here, guys, seriously. Interesting stuff. What are my opinions on the RTX Titan that Linus showed off? Yeah, mentioned that a few times in the stream already, but basically not surprised that they're coming out with an RTX Titan. Interesting that Linus leaked it in that way, but whatever. So yeah, fun stuff. Fun stuff. Luckily it's still working. Don't want my 2080 Ti to die. That would be bad. So I guess I'll probably wrap it up in a moment. So if you have any final questions, probably get them in now. I'll answer a few more before we get going. And yeah. Yeah, no, Brian, no WD-40 spraying. What time is it in Australia? It is 12:33 a.m. And yes, I heard about the 12-hour issue with YouTube. I'll have to look into that in the morning to see what the situation is there. If they only save the last 12 hours, yeah, we're only really interested in saving the part if it dies. We're only interested in saving the part when it dies, and I don't think there'd be any situation where we'd be away from looking at it for 12 hours. So yeah, that's certainly the sort of thing that would happen. If the last 12 hours of the stream should have the part where it dies in it. Because if it dies, we're not going to keep the stream running for 48 hours. We'll just stop and have a look at it and go with that sort of thing, and probably, you know, do some testing on the live stream, see what's going on there. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. If I only say it's last 12 hours, that's it. Love the mechanical keyboards. Okay, yeah, 12-hour time limit for the archive broadcast. So we should be able to go for the full 48 hours. So anyone who's joined should be able to go back and watch the start, which is probably the interesting bit. But yeah, the archive might be, yeah, destroyed for whatever reason, but that's fine, whatever. Okay. MMITT Games, MIT Games, has sent through $2. Thanks for that on the super chat. Thoughts on the Acer 32-inch 4K 60 FPS G-Sync display? I assume you mean the new one that's coming out. Yeah, I think that's looking good. Not sure what the HDR capabilities will be like, but certainly to get those monitors like that, yeah, it should be good to get some new 4K options that are a bit different, have a bit more HDR capabilities in them, and yeah. So yeah, looking forward to seeing those. I think Acer mentioned they'd be getting at least one of those out sometime in December is when they said that they'd be ready for sampling. So that's hopefully when I'm looking into that. And if you're not talking about the new ones and you're just talking about sort of the existing ones, most G-Sync monitors are pretty good. They're validated quite well. How many people work with Hardware Unboxed? It's just Steve and I. We do everything, all the testing, all the benchmarking, all the video editing, everything's done by just either of us. Dunk V2 asks on Super Chat, thanks for that. What is hotter, GTX 480 or RTX 2080 Ti? It's a good question. The 2080 Ti gets pretty hot, but the GTX 480, you could practically cook meat on that thing. But again, a lot of NVIDIA's stock cooler designs have been pretty meh for a while, pretty hot. So certainly I would think, probably overall though, the GTX 480 for what it was delivering was certainly a very hot product. Probably the hottest ever. Thanks, Brian, for the congratulations on 300k subs. Haven't celebrated too much, but we'll probably do something when Steve comes back over here to do some Q&As and all that sort of thing. But yeah, certainly nice to pass 300k. Good to get some support from you guys out there. And yeah, thanks for the support for all the years that we've been benchmarking this. Okay, yeah, it's probably time to get off the stream, I reckon. Yeah, I might actually, what I might do is stop the stream for the first part so that we can just save this sort of Q&A discussion bit and the start of the video. And then I'll start up a second stream shortly that will pretty much follow on straight on from this. That will cover the rest of the stream, which will just be the boring view of this for the next 46 or 45 and a half hours. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to do in a couple of minutes. If you have any final questions, get those in. So yeah, that'll just allow people to watch the interesting part of the stream, and then we'll keep the stream going without any interesting bits for the rest of it. Is it a heaven benchmark for 48 hours? If so, what made you choose that benchmark? It's based on the hard OCP thing, which was their card. They tested that in heaven for 8 hours and then it died. So that's pretty much what we just wanted to emulate the same thing. There's plenty of stuff you can loop, but it's a very easy benchmark to loop. And yeah, that's pretty much the reason for that. And yeah, fun times. Do not move the WD-40, says MIT Games. No, they'll still be there. Be able to enjoy that. It might be a little bit out of frame. I might have to, put that more like this so that you guys see it for the next part. But we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. Okay, how much money and electricity will the stream cost? It's interesting. I estimated before that it'll probably use somewhere in the 30 to 35 kilowatt hour mark, which isn't too bad on current electricity prices, but half of that will be fully done by solar during the day hours. So they'll cut that by pretty significantly. They'll cut all of the daytime running out of it. So maybe then we're looking at I don't know. Maybe be looking at like 20 kilowatt hours, who knows? Which will cost like 10 bucks maybe. Now that sounds a bit high. It's like 50 cents a kilowatt hour. No, it'll be less than that. Burn it to the ground. Yeah, well, if it burns to the ground, that'll be interesting for the stream, that's for sure. All right, that's going to do it for this stream, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Hardware Unboxed 24-hour or 48-hour, I should say. I'm getting tired. That's what you get for 12:40 a.m. Thanks for tuning into the RTX 2080 Ti 48-hour live stream. I'm going to stop this stream, set up part 2 of the stream in a couple of minutes just so that we can archive the first part, because someone alerted us to the fact that if we go for 48 hours, it'll only keep the last 12 hours of streaming. So we want to keep this interesting part at the start for anyone to watch, and then the boring part, well, that's just the boring part. It doesn't really matter if that's kept for the full 48 hours. So I'm sure you guys will be keen as mustard to watch part 2, and to see all that stuff, just the boring screen for the next 46 hours. You can tune in whenever you want to. Check back from time to time, see if anything's happened. I probably won't be on that stream to talk to you guys at any point. I'll probably just be coming in to monitor things from time to time. Probably won't be any more discussion. I've got all the discussion out in this part. So yeah, that's the situation. Thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned for the fun part 2. I'll catch you in the next one.